The day my brother-in-law destroyed my life, he did it with a smile. I watched him lean back in his leather chair, manicured fingers drumming against the mahogany desk that had belonged to my late father-in-law. I'm Ainsley, and until that moment, I'd spent 8 years building the Jordan family boutiques from a small local shop into a thriving chain across 3 states. My children were napping in their usual spot, the cozy corner of my office decorated with their artwork and stuffed animals, when Beau called me in for what he claimed was a routine meeting. "Let's cut to the chase," Beau said, adjusting his gold cufflinks. "We're restructuring and your position is being eliminated." The words hit like a physical blow. Eliminated? I built half these stores from the ground up. Come now, Ainsley. You helped with the decorating, sure, but let's not exaggerate your contribution. His condescending tone made my skin crawl. Since Mark's passing, we need to think about the future. Professional management, not family projects. My hands trembled as I gripped the chair. Mark wanted me to help run this company. He trusted me. "My brother's dead," Beau snapped, mask of civility cracking. "And his sentimental decisions aren't binding. You have until the end of the month to clear out your office. Oh, and the house too, it's company property." "The house? My children's home?" My voice cracked. "Where are we supposed to go?" "That's not my concern. I'm sure you'll figure something out." He turned to his computer, dismissing me. "Close the door on your way out." I stumbled back to my office, mind racing. Through the glass partition, I could see Tegan and Asher still sleeping peacefully. Tegan's dark curls spilled across her sketchbook. She'd been drawing designs for Mommy's stores again. Asher clutched his favourite stuffed elephant, the one Mark gave him before. "Ainsley?" Eleanor, my assistant and closest friend, appeared at my side. "What happened? You're white as a sheet." "He's throwing us out," I whispered. "The job, the house, everything." Eleanor's face hardened. "That snake, he can't do this." "He already has." I sank into my chair. "I have 3 weeks to find a new home and job." "Stay with me," Eleanor offered immediately. "My spare room's yours as long as you need." Before I could respond, Tegan stirred. "Mummy, why are you crying?" I quickly wiped my eyes. "Just a little tired, sweetheart. Hey, how about we pack up early today? We could get ice cream." As I gathered their things, Beau's voice carried through the office. "Brady, so glad you could make it. Let me show you the new plans." Brady King, his wealthy investor, followed Beau past my office. He caught my eye briefly, frowning at my obvious distress, but continued on. That evening, after getting the kids settled at Eleanor's, I returned to pack up my office. The building was silent except for the hum of the cleaning crew's vacuum. I carefully wrapped each of Tegan's drawings, every family photo, every memory of the business I'd helped build. My phone buzzed, a text from my sister Kim. "Just heard. I'm so sorry. Beau wouldn't listen to me. Call me." I couldn't. Not yet. Not when I was barely holding it together. The last item I packed was a framed photo of Mark and me at the opening of our 3rd store. His proud smile, his hand on my shoulder. "You're the creative heart of this place, Ains," he'd said that day. A sound at the door made me turn. Brady stood there, looking uncomfortable. "I heard what happened," he said. "Beau's making a mistake." I straightened my spine. "Thank you, but I'll be fine." "I'm sure you will." He handed me his business card. "When you figure out your next move, call me. Talent shouldn't go to waste." After he left, I stared at the empty office, my second home for nearly a decade, the corner where my children grew up, the walls that had witnessed countless victories and challenges. "Mommy!" Tegan's voice came through my phone speaker. "When are you coming back?" "Soon, baby. Just finishing up some work. Can you read me and Asher a story?" I clutched the phone tighter. "Of course! Let me grab my keys." Standing in the doorway one last time, something shifted inside me. Beau thought he was ending my story, but he was wrong. This wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. My children wouldn't grow up seeing their mother defeated. They would see her rise, stronger than ever. I flicked off the lights and walked away, Brady's card burning a hole in my pocket. Beau wanted a war? Fine, but he'd soon learn I wasn't the decorative little widow he could simply discard. Game on, brother-in-law. Game on. Mommy, look, I made it sparkly. Tegan twirled in the makeshift studio we'd created in Eleanor's garage, her sample dress now adorned with hand-painted glitter stars. 6 months had passed since Beau's betrayal, and my daughter's innocent creativity had become my unexpected salvation. What started as me altering her old clothes to save money had evolved into something more. "Those stars are perfect," I said, snapping a photo. "Want to help me paint more?" Eleanor burst through the door, waving her phone. "Ainsley, that mommy blogger I told you about, she just posted about Tegan's dress from last week. Her followers are going crazy." I grabbed the phone, scrolling through hundreds of comments. "Where can I buy this? My daughter needs this. Finally, something unique." "See?" Eleanor grinned. "I told you we were onto something. Kids' boutique fashion, but with that magical touch Tegan adds. It's genius." The doorbell rang, and Jacob Price, my former supplier from Jordan Family Boutiques, stepped into our cramped workspace. He surveyed the racks of hand-decorated children's clothes with an appraising eye. "When you called, I was skeptical," he admitted. "But this is different. Fresh." "Different enough to help us scale up?" I asked, heart pounding. He picked up one of Tegan's painted dresses. "With the right backing? Absolutely. But you'll need capital." "Already working on that," I said, pulling out Brady's card. "He told me to call when I had a plan. Well, now I do." Eleanor squeezed my hand as I dialed. When Brady answered, his interest was immediate. "Send me your business proposal. And, Ainsley, make it bold." The next weeks were a blur. Brady's investment allowed us to rent a real workshop. Jacob connected us with ethical manufacturers. Eleanor managed our growing social media presence while I designed. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. "Mom," Asher called one night, holding up my phone. "Aunt Kim's calling again." I took the phone, bracing myself. "Kim?" "Beau's furious," she said without preamble. "He saw your Instagram. Says you're stealing his market." I laughed bitterly. "His market? He kicked me out, remember?" "I know, She sighed. "Be careful, okay? He's making calls, trying to pressure your suppliers." "Let him try. I've got better allies now." After hanging up, I found Tegan and Asher colouring at their homework table in the workshop. "Who wants pizza? Can we eat in the sparkle corner?" Asher asked, referring to the area where we decorated clothes. "Only if you promise not to spill on the new shipment." Eleanor joined us, laptop in hand. "Speaking of new shipments, our holiday collection just sold out. In 2 hours." "What?" I nearly dropped the pizza. "The whole collection. Every piece. And that's not all." She turned the screen toward me. "Remember that boutique in Miami you loved? They want to carry our line." Tears pricked my eyes as I remembered Beau's words. "Let's not exaggerate your contribution." The next morning, Brady visited our workshop. He watched Tegan demonstrate her glitter technique to our new design assistant while I showed him the numbers. "Impressive," he said. "Very impressive. You know, Beau called me last week." I stiffened. "Oh?" "Wanted me to pull my investment. Said you were..." He chuckled. "What was the phrase? Amateur hour with glitter. And I told him I prefer to back winners." Brady gestured around the bustling workshop. "This is just the beginning, Ainsley. Your brand has heart. That's rare." Later that night, after the kids were asleep in our new apartment above the workshop, Eleanor and I sat surrounded by design sketches. "We need a name," she said. "Something that captures the magic." I picked up one of Tegan's drawings, a dress covered in stars with "For Mommy" scrawled across the top. "What about Starlight and Stories? Because every piece tells a story?" "Perfect." Eleanor raised her wine glass. "To Starlight and Stories, and to proving that amateur hour can kick professional butt." My phone buzzed with an email notification. Another major boutique wanted to schedule a meeting. Below it was a text from Kim. "Beau's losing it. His numbers are down. Karma's real, sis." I smiled, thinking of the empty office where Beau had dismissed me. Now I had my own office, filled with children's laughter and creativity. My kids weren't just surviving, they were thriving, watching their mother build something beautiful from nothing. "Hey," Eleanor said softly, "where'd you go just now?" "Just thinking about how sometimes the worst endings lead to the best beginnings." She clinked her glass against mine. "And we're just getting started." Looking at our workshop below, glittering with possibility, I knew she was right. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about creating something meaningful, something that would make my children proud. And if it happened to drive Bo crazy in the process, well, that was just a glittery bonus. The gold-embossed envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning, just as I was helping Tegan pick out her outfit for career day at school. "I'm wearing Starlight and Stories, Mommy," she declared, twirling in one of our newest designs, "because I'm going to be a fashion designer like you." Eleanor appeared in the doorway, holding the envelope like it might bite. "This just came by courier." I recognized the Jordan family crest immediately. 2 years had passed since Bo kicked us out, and now here was his fancy invitation, demanding attention just like its sender. "What is it?" Asher peered around Eleanor's leg. "Your Uncle Bo is hosting a family reunion," I read aloud, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "At the Mountain View Resort. The whole family?" Tegan's eyes lit up. "Even Aunt Kim?" "Yes, Princess. Everyone." Eleanor waited until the kids left for school before pouncing. "You're not seriously considering going, are you?" "Kim's been begging me to visit," I said, turning the invitation over in my hands. "And the kids miss their cousins." "It's a trap," Eleanor declared, pacing our office. "Bo's up to something. Why else host a reunion now?" My phone buzzed, Brady calling. "Have you seen the business news?" he asked without preamble. I pulled up the article he texted. "Jordan Family Boutique seeking new investment partners." My eyes widened at the details. "Bo's empire is crumbling," Brady said. "Your success with Starlight and Stories hit him harder than anyone expected. He's lost 3 major investors in the last month. So the reunion is damage control. He needs to show a united family front to attract new investors." Brady paused. "He needs you, Ainsley. Your brand is worth more than his now." After hanging up, I found Eleanor stress-organizing fabric swatches. "Brady thinks Bo's desperate," I told her. "Perfect! Send your regrets. Let him sweat." But before I could respond, Kim called. "Please come," she begged. "Bo's being impossible. The kids ask about Tegan and Asher constantly. And—" she lowered her voice. "Things aren't good here, Ains. I could use my sister." That evening, during our weekly pizza and movie night, I watched my children laugh at the screen. They deserved to know their family, despite Bo's actions. "Hey, Munchkins," I said during a quiet moment. "How would you feel about seeing your cousins next weekend?" Their excited squeals drowned out the movie. The next morning, Jacob visited with our latest sales reports. "The Miami boutiques want to double their orders," he said, then noticed the invitation on my desk. "Ah, you got one too?" "Two. You're invited?" He nodded. "Bo's inviting everyone who matters in the industry. It's quite transparent, really." "What would you do?" Jacob leaned back, thoughtful. "I'd go, show strength. But Ainsley," his eyes twinkled, "I'd wear your best design." That afternoon, while the kids did homework in the workshop, Eleanor helped me draft the RSVP. "If we're doing this," she said, "we're doing it right. We'll need new pieces for you and the kids. Something that screams success but whispers class." "Already sketching," I said, showing her my notebook. "Remember that midnight blue fabric we've been saving? We worked late into the night creating the perfect outfits. Tegan insisted on adding her signature stars to her dress, tiny, elegant ones that caught the light. A week later, Kim called again. "Bo's micromanaging everything," she sighed. "He's invited half the fashion industry. It's not even a family reunion anymore. It's a networking event. How are you holding up?" "Honestly, I miss my sister. I miss who we all used to be." After we hung up, I found Asher studying the old family photo on my desk. "Mom, is Uncle Bo still mad at us?" I sat beside him. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes when they're scared or angry, but that doesn't mean we have to stay angry back." "Is that why we're going? To not be angry?" "We're going because family is complicated but important, and because sometimes being strong means showing up, even when it's hard." That night, I lay awake, remembering the day Beau threw us out. I'd been broken then, terrified. Now I ran a successful company. My children were happy. We'd not just survived, we'd flourished. My phone lit up with a text from Brady. Just heard from another Jordan investor. They're jumping ship. Beau's going to be desperate at this reunion. Watch your back. Eleanor's words from earlier echoed in my head. It's a trap. Maybe it was. But as I thought about Kim's plea, my children's excitement, and, yes, the delicious irony of Beau needing me now, I knew we had to go. I pulled out my sketch pad and started designing. If Beau wanted to make this reunion a show of power, I'd give him exactly that. But this time, I'd be the one writing the script. Let the games begin, brother-in-law. Let the games begin. Mountain View Resort loomed before us, all glass and stone against the autumn sky. I adjusted Tegan's star-studded midnight blue dress, a perfect match to mine, while Asher tugged at his coordinating bow tie. "Ready?" I asked my children, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Ready," they chorused, but Asher grabbed my hand tight as we walked through the grand entrance. The reunion was in full swing, the ballroom buzzing with familiar faces and industry bigwigs. I spotted Jacob near the bar, raising his glass in silent support. Several boutique owners who carried our line broke into whispers as we passed. "Ainsley!" Kim rushed forward, wrapping me in a fierce hug. "You look amazing." She pulled back, tears in her eyes. "And look at my gorgeous niece and nephew." While the kids reunited with their cousins, Kim linked her arm through mine. "Beau's been watching the door like a hawk. He's by the investors' table with Brady." "Brady's here already?" "Hasn't left Beau's side. Though from Beau's expression, the conversation isn't going well." I caught Beau's eye across the room. His practiced smile faltered as he took in my appearance, his gaze lingering on the small but distinctive Starlight and Stories logo on my clutch. "Mommy!" Tegan called. "Everyone's asking about my dress." Sure enough, a group of women had gathered around my daughter, admiring the delicate starwork on her outfit. I recognized several as buyers from major department stores. "Your daughter's wearing one of your designs?" one asked. "It's exquisite." "Our holiday collection launches next week," I said smoothly. "I'd love to show you the lookbook." Beau appeared at my elbow, his cologne too strong, his smile too wide. "Ainsley, so glad you could make it." "Beau," I kept my voice pleasant. "Lovely party." "We need to talk," he murmured, but before he could continue, Brady approached. "Ainsley, that must be the famous Tegan I've heard so much about." Brady knelt to my daughter's level. "I love your stars. Did you help design this dress?" Tegan nodded enthusiastically. "I helped with all the dresses. Want to see my sketchbook?" While Tegan charmed Brady, I circulated the room. Everywhere I heard whispers about Starlight and Stories' meteoric rise. Several guests wore our designs, including Kim's daughter. "Your sister-in-law's quite the success story," I overheard one investor tell Beau. "Remarkable recovery after, well," Beau's face reddened. "Yes, well, family has always been our strength at Jordan Boutiques." "Really?" Brady's voice cut in. I heard differently. Beau's forced laugh couldn't hide his panic as Brady walked away. During dinner, I sat with Kim, watching Tegan and Asher play with their cousins. "How bad is it?" I asked quietly. Kim glanced at Beau, who was desperately trying to engage a disinterested investor. "Bad. He gambled big on some luxury developments. When they failed..." "Mrs. Webb?" A hotel staff member appeared. "Mr. King would like a word in the garden terrace." Outside, Brady stood examining a rose bush. "Your timing is impeccable," he said. "Beau's about to ask for your help." "What?" "He needs a merger. Your brand success, your industry goodwill. It could save Jordan Boutiques." Brady smiled. "The question is, what will you do with that power?" Before I could respond, Asher found me. "Mom, Uncle Beau made Tegan cry." I rushed inside to find my daughter sniffling while Kim berated her husband. "All I said," Beau defended, "was that her little stars were fine for children's games, but real fashion." "Real fashion," I cut in, my voice sharp. "Our little stars outsold your entire summer collection." The room fell silent. Perhaps, Bo said tightly, we should discuss this privately. In my office. No. I lifted Tegan onto my hip. We're done with private discussions in your office. Ainsley, be reasonable. We're family. Family? I laughed. Now we're family? Where was family when you threw us out? That was business, he hissed. And how's business now, Bo? His face contorted. Around us, investors and industry players watched the drama unfold, no doubt mentally calculating the value of their Jordan Boutiques stock. Mum? Asha tugged my dress. Can we go home? Not yet, sweetheart. I faced Bo. You wanted to talk? Let's talk. Tomorrow my office, 9 a.m. Bring your proposal. Your office? He practically spat the words. Yes, the one above my successful workshop, in my thriving business. I smiled sweetly. You know, the amateur hour with glitter you were so worried about? Kim stifled a laugh. Brady didn't bother hiding his. As we left the ballroom, I heard the whispers follow us, but this time they weren't about the fallen widow with 2 kids. They were about the woman who'd built an empire from scratch. Mom? Tegan asked as we reached our car. Did we win? I buckled her in, thinking of Bo's face, of tomorrow's meeting, of the long game still ahead. No, baby, but we're about to. Bo arrived at 9:15, his Italian suit unable to hide the tension in his shoulders. Eleanor met him at reception, making him wait another 10 minutes before leading him to my office. I'd chosen my position carefully, standing at the window overlooking our workshop, where our team was preparing the holiday collection. The sound of laughter and music drifted up from below. Quite an operation you've built, Bo said, trying to sound casual. Let's skip the small talk. I turned to face him. You need something from me. What is it? He placed a folder on my desk. A merger. Equal partnership. Jordan Family Boutiques and Starlight and Stories together again. Equal? I raised an eyebrow. Last I checked, my company was worth 3 times yours. His jaw tightened. The Jordan name still carries weight. The Jordan name is drowning in debt. Brady showed me the numbers. Before Bo could respond, Eleanor buzzed in. Kim's here. Should I send her up? Bo's face reddened. You invited my wife? No, Kim said from the doorway. I invited myself. She walked in, looking more confident than I'd seen her in years. Someone needs to witness this conversation. Kim, go home, Bo snapped. Like you sent Ainsley home 2 years ago? Kim settled into a chair. I don't think so. I opened Bo's proposal, scanning the terms. This is insulting. You want my company's resources but maintain majority control? It's a fair offer. It's desperation, I cut in. Your investors are leaving. Brady's pulling out next week. You need my success to save your failure. Bo slammed his hand on the desk. I built that company. No, Kim said quietly. Dad built it. Mark expanded it. Ainsley grew it. You just inherited it. And nearly destroyed it, I added. Fine, Bo threw up his hands. What do you want? Name your terms. I pulled out my own folder. Complete restructuring. Starlight and Stories remains independent, but acquires controlling interest in Jordan Boutiques. You step down as CEO. That's ridiculous. That's business, I smiled. Isn't that what you taught me? Kim leaned forward. Bo listened to her. This is the best option we have. We? He turned on her. Whose side are you on? The side that keeps our family's legacy alive. Kim's voice hardened. The side that doesn't end with bankruptcy. A knock at the door interrupted us. Eleanor entered with Tegan and Asha. Sorry, she said, not looking sorry at all. They just finished their morning design session. They wanted to show their mom their new ideas. Tegan bounded over, her sketchbook open. Mom, look what I designed. I examined her drawing. A sophisticated take on our signature star pattern, worked into a formal dress design. It was surprisingly good. That's actually innovative, Bo said, surprise evident in his voice. She has her mother's eye, Kim said pointedly. Asha approached his uncle cautiously. We made something for you two. He held out a small gift bag. Bo opened it, pulling out a handmade tie with tiny, elegant stars embroidered along the bottom. You made this? Mom helped, Asha said. She says we shouldn't stay angry even when people make mistakes. The room fell silent. Bo stared at the tie, his hands trembling slightly. The children's workshop downstairs, I said softly. It's not just for show. We teach kids to design, to create, to believe in themselves. I met his eyes. That's what real legacy looks like, Bo. He sat heavily in a chair, the tie still in his hands. I was wrong, he whispered. 2 years ago. About everything. Yes, you were. The merger terms, he said after a moment. Can we discuss the leadership structure? You can stay on as creative director, I offered. Under new management. Kim touched his arm. It's a good deal, Bo. Better than we deserve. He looked around my office at the wall of magazine covers featuring our designs, at the children's corner filled with artwork, at the thriving workshop below. Okay, he said finally. You win, Ainsley. No, Bo. I handed him a pen. We all win. That's what family should be about. After the papers were signed and Kim had led a subdued Bo out, Eleanor poured us both a drink. You did it, she said. You actually did it. We did it, I corrected, hugging my children close. All of us. Tegan looked up from her sketching. Does this mean we can visit Aunt Kim more? Yes, baby. And maybe we can help Uncle Bo learn to add a little sparkle to his life. Speaking of sparkle, Eleanor grinned, wait until you see tomorrow's sales figures. That little drama at the reunion? Our orders have tripled. I laughed, watching my children return to their designs, their futures brighter than any stars we could sow. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's showing others a better way to shine. Are you absolutely sure about this? Eleanor paced my office, waving the latest proposal from Brady. Expanding into Europe is huge. Maybe we should wait until the Jordan merger settles. I was about to respond when Jacob burst in, grinning. You won't believe who I just saw skulking around the workshop. Bo? I guessed. Watching the children's design class like a hawk, even took notes. 3 weeks had passed since the merger, and Bo's transformation had been unexpected. He'd shown up every day, quietly observing, learning, asking questions without his usual arrogance. Mom! Tegan rushed in. Uncle Bo helped me with my sketches, look. She thrust forward her notebook. The design was surprisingly good, her usual whimsy tempered with practical details I recognized from Bo's style. He said we could try it for the spring collection, she beamed. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. Bo? Suggesting children's designs? People can change, I said, just as my phone buzzed with a text from Kim. He's different. Thank you. Jacob cleared his throat. Speaking of change, Brady's waiting downstairs. Says it's time to decide about Europe. I found Brady in our showroom, examining our newest pieces. Bo was there too, explaining the construction of a particularly intricate dress to a group of design students. The stars aren't just decoration, Bo was saying. They're part of the structure. My niece taught me that. Brady smiled as I approached. Quite a change from amateur hour with glitter, isn't it? The merger's working better than expected, I admitted. Which is why we need to move now. Brady gestured to the papers in his hand. European buyers are hungry for something fresh. Your brand tells a story they want to hear. It's not just my brand anymore, I said, watching Bo demonstrate a stitching technique. That's exactly why it'll work. Brady lowered his voice. Bo knows the business side. You have the vision. Together, you could be global. Before I could respond, Asha came running in. Mom, look what Uncle Bo helped me make. He proudly displayed a small bow tie, decorated with tiny embroidered stars. The craftsmanship was impeccable. He said I could teach the other kids how to make them, Asha added excitedly. Bo approached, looking almost shy. If that's okay with you, of course. Teaching suits you, I said. Learning suits me better. He straightened his tie, the one Asha had given him. I've been thinking about the European expansion. Brady tensed, but Bo continued. We should start with children's design workshops. Build community first, then introduce the brand. Do it right, not just fast. I stared at him. That's actually brilliant. I learned from the best, He nodded toward the workshop where Tegan was showing other kids her design techniques. Sometimes the smallest stars shine the brightest. Eleanor appeared with fresh market reports. Paris is calling again. They want to know about the workshop program. Tell them yes, I said, but with a twist. We'll bring our young designers with us. A children's fashion tour? Brady looked skeptical. A family tour, I corrected, showing Europe how American kids are revolutionizing fashion. Beau's eyes lit up. The press will love it, but more importantly, the children will learn something valuable. Speaking of valuable lessons, Kim said, entering with a stack of magazines, look who made the cover of Fashion Forward. The cover showed Tegan and Asher in their workshop, surrounded by other children all creating designs. The headline read, "The Future of Fashion, How One Family's Story Changed an Industry." They interviewed me, Beau said quietly, asked about my biggest mistake and greatest lesson. And, I prompted, I told them the truth, that I let pride blind me to real innovation, that my 8-year-old niece understands fashion better than I did as CEO. Brady chuckled. Now that's a story worth investing in. He pulled out his phone. I'm calling London. This needs to happen now. As Brady made calls and Eleanor coordinated details, I watched Beau sit with the children, patiently teaching them about fabric and form. Kim joined them, adding her own expertise about colour theory. Mom, Tegan tugged my sleeve, can we really go to Paris? Yes, baby, we're going to show them how to make the world a little more sparkly. With Uncle Beau? With the whole family. Jacob appeared at my side. You know, when you first started this, I thought it was about revenge. So did I admitted. But sometimes the best victories aren't about winning or losing. They're about transforming, Beau added, overhearing as he helped Asher with a design. About learning to see the stars instead of the darkness. Looking around at my expanded family, Eleanor organizing, Brady planning, Kim teaching, Beau learning, and my children shining, I realized we'd built something far more valuable than revenge. We'd built a constellation of second chances, all of us learning to sparkle in our own way. The Paris Fashion Week crowd fell silent as Tegan stepped onto the runway, leading a parade of young designers wearing their own creations. My daughter's midnight blue dress sparkled under the lights, each star catching and throwing back the glow like tiny mirrors. They love it, Eleanor whispered beside me. Look at their faces. She was right. The usually stoic fashion elite was smiling, phones raised to capture the moment. In the front row, Brady sat with a group of European investors, all nodding approvingly. Then I saw him, Marcus Vale, the notoriously brutal fashion critic, scribbling furiously in his notebook. My stomach clenched. Beau appeared at my shoulder. Don't worry about Marcus, watch this. Asher walked out next, wearing a perfectly tailored suit with star-studded lapels. He carried a small tablet projecting his design sketches onto the massive screen behind him. The audience gasped as his childish drawings transformed into sophisticated designs before their eyes. Your idea? I asked Beau. The technology, yes. The creativity? He smiled. All him. The show continued, each child showcasing not just clothes, but the story behind them. When Tegan returned for the finale, she didn't just walk, she twirled, stopped, and began teaching the audience her signature star pattern. And now, she announced in careful French, everyone can make their own magic. The crowd erupted. Even Marcus Vale was standing, applauding. Backstage after the show, chaos erupted. Buyers pushed forward with contracts, journalists shouted questions, and photographers' flashes created a storm of light. Madam Webb, Marcus Vale approached, his accent thick. Your children's workshop program, brilliant. But tell me, why start with Paris? Before I could answer, Beau stepped forward. Because Paris knows true innovation when they see it. Right, Marcus. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Ah, Monsieur Jordan, last time we met you said children's fashion was beneath you. I was wrong about many things, Beau said, straightening Asher's bow tie. My nephew here taught me that. Uncle Beau, Tegan called. The French kids want to learn the star pattern. A group of well-dressed children had gathered around Tegan, their parents, prominent fashion houses representatives. watching with interest. Go, I told Bo. They need you. As Bo joined the impromptu workshop, Brady approached with the investors. They want to fast-track the expansion, not just Paris, Milan, London, Barcelona. All of them? Eleanor's eyes widened. With one condition, Brady said. They want the workshop program as part of the deal, in every location. Kim appeared, phone in hand. Social media is exploding. Zara's Starlight Kids is trending worldwide. Suddenly, Marcus Vale's voice cut through the chaos. Incredible! Who taught you this technique? We turned to see the famous critic on his knees beside Tegan, carefully adding stars to a piece of fabric. My mom invented it, Tegan said proudly, but Uncle Bo helped make it better. Marcus looked up at me. This collaboration between you and your brother-in-law, it wasn't always so amicable, no? The room quieted. Even the children sensed the tension. Bo stood facing the crowd. I made a terrible mistake 2 years ago. I let pride and fear drive away the very innovation our family needed. He met my eyes. But Ainsley taught me that true strength isn't in controlling everything. It's in letting others shine. And now, Marcus pressed. Now. Bo smiled as Asher showed a French boy how to properly knot his star-patterned tie. Now we're building something bigger than ourselves. We're building a family, Tegan announced, making everyone laugh. Later that evening, during the celebration dinner, Eleanor raised her glass. To the most successful Paris debut in recent history. To family, Kim added, squeezing Bo's hand. To second chances, Bo said quietly. Brady cleared his throat. Actually, I have one more surprise. He slid a document across the table. The European Fashion Council wants Starlight and Stories to head their new youth initiative. All expenses paid, full creative control. I stared at the proposal. This is a game changer, Brady finished. They want to implement your workshop program in schools across Europe. But that would mean moving to Paris, Eleanor said. At least temporarily. I looked at my children happily teaching their new French friends at the next table. They were already at home here, already growing in ways I never imagined. What do you think? I asked Bo. Can you handle the US operations? With Kim's help? He nodded. We've got it covered. This is your moment, Ainsley. Take it. As if on cue, Tegan ran over. Mom, can we show them the midnight collection tomorrow, please? I pulled her close, breathing in the sweet smell of her hair mixed with Paris air. 2 years ago, I'd been broken, homeless, scared. Now I was being offered the chance to change children's lives across Europe. Yes, I said, watching my daughter's face light up like her beloved stars. We can show them everything. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's building something so beautiful that the past becomes nothing more than the foundation for a brighter future. Hold still, Uncle Bo. Tegan adjusted his bow tie, her latest design, featuring a constellation pattern that seemed to move in the light. Perfect. The grand reopening of the original Jordan family boutique had drawn quite a crowd. Through the window, I could see fashion reporters mingling with local families, all waiting for the doors to open. Ready? I asked Bo, who was fidgeting with his cufflinks. Almost. He pulled an envelope from his pocket. I need you to see this first. Inside was a deed to my old family home, the one he'd forced us to leave. I'm signing it over to you, he said. It should have been yours all along. Bo, please, let me make this right. Before I could respond, Eleanor burst in. They're getting restless out there, and wait until you see what the kids have done. We followed her to the main floor where Asher stood proudly beside a new display. The wall behind the counter had been transformed into a massive star map, each constellation marking a milestone in our journey. The largest star bore the words, "Family is forever," in Tegan's handwriting. The children from the workshop helped, Asher explained. Everyone added their own star. Kim appeared, carrying a vintage dress we'd found in storage. Remember this? From the first store? Your father's design, Bo said softly. We should display it. Already planned for that, Eleanor announced, revealing a special case. Right between Tegan's first dress and Asher's bow tie collection. Brady slipped in through the back door. The European representatives are here, and you won't believe who else showed up. Marcus Vale strode in, now wearing one of our signature ties. I wouldn't miss this for the world. The story of fashion's greatest comeback deserves proper documentation. It's not a comeback, I corrected. It's a new beginning. The children from our workshop program began arriving, each wearing their own designs. French, Italian, American, all mixing together, sharing techniques and dreams. "Mom," Tegan called, "can we do the ribbon cutting? All of us together?" I looked at Beau, who nodded. "It's your show now." "No," I said, taking the scissors. "It's our show. Family, remember?" We gathered at the entrance. Me, Beau, Kim, the kids, Eleanor, Brady, and all our young designers. The crowd pressed closer as Tegan spoke into the microphone. "Welcome to the new Jordan and Starlight Family Boutique," she announced, "where everyone's stars can shine." As we cut the ribbon together, I caught Beau wiping his eyes. "Allergies," he muttered. "Sure," Kim laughed. "Nothing to do with pride or joy or anything like that." The crowd poured in, but what touched me most was watching the children lead tours, explaining designs with professional confidence. Asher showed off his new boys' collection, while Tegan taught star-stitching at a special demonstration table. "You've created something extraordinary," Marcus said, scribbling in his notebook. "Not just fashion. You've created hope." "We all did," I replied, watching Beau patiently teach a young boy how to measure fabric. "Sometimes it takes losing everything to find what matters." Eleanor appeared with news from our Paris office. The school program was expanding to 20 new locations. Brady followed with contracts from 3 major department stores. But the real moment came later, after the crowds thinned. Beau gathered everyone in the workshop area, clearing his throat nervously. "I've been thinking," he said, "about legacy and family and stars." He revealed a sketch, a design that combined his classic style with Tegan's stars. "Maybe it's time for an adult line. If my niece will teach me." Tegan threw her arms around him. "First lesson starts now." As they bent over the design table together, Kim squeezed my hand. "Look at them. Who'd have thought?" I fingered the house deed in my pocket. "People can surprise you." "Speaking of surprises," Eleanor cut in, "wait until you see next month's Fashion Forward. They're calling us the future of inclusive fashion education." "That's nice," Asher said seriously, "but can we have pizza in the workshop like old times?" Everyone laughed, and soon we were all sitting cross-legged on the floor, sharing pizza and dreams. The children taught Beau their secret handshake. Kim and Eleanor planned the next collection. Brady and Marcus debated fashion trends. Looking around at my expanded family, blood and chosen alike, I realized something. Success wasn't in proving Beau wrong. It wasn't in the contracts or magazine covers or global expansion. It was in this moment, watching my brother-in-law learn from my daughter. It was in the way Asher's eyes lit up when someone wore his designs. It was in the laughter and love filling this space that had once seen so much pain. "Mom," Tegan called, "Uncle Beau needs help with the star pattern." "Coming, baby." I joined them at the table, showing Beau the technique I'd created during those dark days after he'd thrown us out. "I was such a fool," he whispered. "No," I corrected, guiding his hands. "You were just looking at the darkness. Now you see the stars." And in that moment, surrounded by family and future, I knew we'd all found our light.
The live stream to Grandpa Edward began with a view of my empty hands before it shifted to my bedroom door. Sweet 16 reveal, coming soon. I murmured into my phone, struggling to contain my thrill. "Ready for this, Grandpa?" His chuckle, a bit staticky through my earbuds, responded. "As ready as can be, sweetheart." I pushed the door open, already picturing where I'd set up the new art supplies he'd promised. But the words caught in my throat. Where my easel should have been, a spotless white crib stood bathed in the afternoon sun. My posters, my paintings, my entire teenage life had been wiped away. Pale yellow ducks pranced across freshly painted walls. Mom. My voice was weaker than intended. Dad. Their voices drifted up from downstairs, likely from Dad's study. My feet felt like lead as I went down, still broadcasting. The study door was slightly ajar, letting snippets of their conversation reach me. Lena will understand eventually. Eleanor. Maybe we should have. Should have waited until she got home from school, given her time to have one of her dramatic outbursts. I pushed the door wide open. Mom stood by the window in her sharp blazer, while Dad was slumped in his leather chair, his gaze avoiding mine. What happened to my room? I asked, though I already knew the nursery theme, the timing. It had to be for Sophia's baby. Mom's lips tightened into that familiar line of disapproval. Good. We need to discuss some changes. Changes. The word tasted bitter. You mean how you turned my bedroom into a nursery without even telling me? Your sister needs that space more than you do right now. Mom stated, as if explaining something obvious to a child. We've arranged for you to stay with Aunt Clara. Dad mumbled, shifting in his chair. It's just temporary, honey, until we figure something out. Figure something out? I gripped my phone tighter, suddenly grateful for Grandpa's silent presence on the other end. I live here. This is my home. Was your home? Mom corrected sharply. Honestly, Lena, you're 16 now. It's time to stop being so self-absorbed. Your sister is starting a family. She needs our support. The room swam slightly. And what about what I need? What you need. Mom's voice turned icy. Is to grow up and stop making everything about yourself. Clara's expecting you tonight. I've already packed your essentials. I looked at Dad, but he just stared at his hands, shoulders hunched as if trying to disappear into his chair. Sweet 16. Happy birthday to me, I guess? I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. Thanks for the heads up. Don't be dramatic, Lena. Mom sighed. Your aunt's place is perfectly nice, and it's closer to your school. This is hardly the tragedy you're making it out to be. I backed toward the door, my hand finding the doorknob. You're right, Mom, it's not a tragedy. It's just really clear where I stand with you both. As I turned to leave, I saw Dad flinch, a slight tremor in his hand, as he reached for his coffee cup. Mom's reflection in the window showed a flicker across her face. Not guilt, exactly, but something akin to unease. I ended the live stream as I went upstairs, but not before whispering, "Did you get all that, Grandpa?" His response was instant and grim. Every word, sweetheart. Every single word. Standing in what used to be my room, I ran my fingers along the crib's smooth white rail. The nursery was beautiful, truly perfect for the golden child's perfect baby. But as I traced one of those cheerful yellow ducks, I made a silent promise. This was not going to be the end of my story. Not by a long shot. Clara's spare room smelled faintly of lavender and fresh paint. She'd stayed up late helping me hang fairy lights across the ceiling, turning the plain walls into something almost magical. But at 3 a.m., even magic couldn't quiet my racing thoughts. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. Mom says you're being difficult about the nursery. Can't you think of someone else for once? I switched off my phone and padded downstairs, drawn by the sound of clinking dishes. Clara stood at the kitchen counter, her dark hair tousled from sleep, stirring something in a pot. Couldn't sleep either. She asked without turning around. How did you know it was me? Because you walk exactly like your mother used to, before she started wearing those ridiculous heels everywhere. She poured hot chocolate into 2 mugs, adding a generous handful of mini marshmallows to mine. Want to talk about it? I wrapped my hands around the warm mug. Did you know about their plans for my room? No. Her voice held a sharp edge I hadn't heard before. Eleanor called me yesterday morning, informed me you'd be staying here, as if I were some kind of hotel service. You could have said no. And leave you where? With them. She sat opposite me, her eyes sharp in the dim kitchen light. Do you remember your 10th birthday? I stared into my hot chocolate. The art show? The one you spent weeks preparing for? Those paintings? Your teacher even called to say how talented you were. She paused, stirring her drink. Your mother scheduled a client dinner for the same evening. Your father promised he'd come see your work afterwards, but he fell asleep in his study instead. The memory still stung. Mom said I shouldn't have expected them to rearrange their lives for a school art show. You stopped painting after that. Yeah, well, what was the point? The marshmallows in my cocoa had melted into a sweet, sticky swirl. Mom always said art wouldn't pay the bills. Clara's phone chimed, her expression clouding over as she glanced at it. Speaking of your mother, what now? She wants me to send you home this weekend for a family dinner. Sophia is officially announcing her pregnancy. She looked up at me. You don't have to go. Yes, I do. I traced the rim of my mug. If I don't, they'll say I'm being selfish again, making everything about me, just like they made my birthday about Sophia. Clara's voice was gentle, but her words struck home. My phone buzzed again upstairs, probably another text from Sophia. I thought about my sister's seemingly perfect life. Her successful husband, her growing family, our parents' constant approval. But I'd also seen the cracks in her smile at family gatherings, the way her hands trembled when Mom criticized her weight or career choices. You know what's funny? I said, breaking the silence. When I was little, I used to think Sophia hung the moon. She'd sneak into my room after Mom and Dad's parties, tell me stories about her college adventures. Then she met Richard, and suddenly it was like she became Mom's mini-me. Clara reached across the table, squeezing my hand. People change, sweetheart. Sometimes not for the better. Yeah. I squeezed back, then stood up. I should try to sleep. Big family dinner to prepare for, right? Lena. Clara called as I reached the stairs. Whatever you're planning. And don't tell me you're not planning something. Just remember that revenge might feel good for a moment. But it won't fix what's broken. I paused, thinking about the live stream Grandpa had witnessed, Dad's averted gaze, all the birthdays and art shows and moments that had slipped away. Maybe not, I said quietly, but pretending everything's fine isn't good either. Grandpa Edward's Mercedes rolled into Aunt Clara's driveway exactly 3 days after the birthday incident. I watched from the window as he emerged, his usual sharp suit replaced by casual slacks and a sweater. He looked older, somehow tired in a way I'd never seen before. You didn't have to come, I said when he stepped inside, though my tight hug probably betrayed how relieved I was to see him. Actually, I did, he replied, placing a leather briefcase on Clara's coffee table, especially after what I witnessed on that live stream. Clara appeared with coffee, her expression guarded. Eleanor called this morning. She's not happy about you being here. Eleanor hasn't been happy about anything since she married that spineless. He caught himself, glancing at me. Sorry, sweetheart, but we need to discuss something important. He pulled several documents from his briefcase. I recognized the Whitman Industries letterhead. Your mother's been pressuring me to sign over control of the company, he said, spreading the papers across the table. She claims it's about succession planning, but the timing is interesting, isn't it? The same week they kick you out. I picked up one of the documents, scanning the legal jargon I barely understood. The same week they assume I won't find out about their treatment of you. His voice hardened. They forgot about our weekly video calls, didn't they? Clara leaned forward. What are you planning? Before he could answer, my phone buzzed. Mom's face flashed on the screen. I showed it to them, and Grandpa nodded. Put it on speaker. Lena. Mom's voice filled the room. Your father and I expect you at dinner tonight. No excuses. I'm studying. Isn't going to work. Your sister's announcement dinner is important to this family, and since you're still part of this family, despite your recent attitude, you will attend. I saw Grandpa's slight nod. Fine, I'll be there. And wear something appropriate, not those dreadful ripped jeans. The line went dead. Still part of the family? I echoed, a bitter laugh escaping me. Funny how that works when they need something. Grandpa tapped the papers. They need more than you know. The company's facing some challenges. Nothing serious yet, but enough to make your mother nervous about her position. And Sophia's baby. That's their backup plan. The perfect family image, Clara murmured. The successful daughter, the precious grandchild, the disposable teenager, I added. Grandpa's expression darkened. You were never disposable, Lena. And it's time your parents remembered that. He pulled out another document. This is my current will. I'm making some changes. Dad, Clara warned, don't do anything rash. Rash would be letting them continue this behavior. He turned to me. I'll be attending tonight's dinner too. Uninvited. My stomach twisted. They'll blame me. Let them. He squeezed my hand. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for people we love is to stop enabling their worst behavior. I thought about Mom's controlling voice, Dad's constant silence, Sophia's perfect life built on perfectly crafted lies. What if it makes everything worse? Worse than being erased from your own home? Clara asked softly. Worse than being treated like an inconvenience by the people who should love you most. Grandpa gathered his papers. The question isn't whether this will make things worse, sweetheart. The question is whether you're ready to show them who you really are. Someone who won't be pushed aside or forgotten. I picked up my phone, looking at Mom's missed call notification. I guess we'll find out at dinner. Yes, he said, and for a moment I saw a flash of the shrewd businessman who'd built an empire. I suppose we will. I arrived early for Sophia's announcement dinner, slipping in through the kitchen door like I used to when I was late for curfew. Voices drifted from Dad's study. Mom's sharp tone, Dad's quieter murmur, and Sophia's familiar laugh. The company's practically ours already. Mom was saying, Dad's getting sentimental in his old age. All it takes is one grandchild, too. I edged closer to the partially open door. But what about Lena? Sophia asked. She's his favorite. Everyone knows it. Lena is a child. Mom dismissed. She can't run a company. Besides, once the baby comes, Dad will forget all about her artistic phases and teenage dramatics. Eleanor, Dad's voice held a rare note of unease. Maybe we should slow down. The way we handled her birthday. The way we handled it was necessary. That girl needs to learn her place. And with the merger coming up. The merger. Sophia's voice sharpened. What merger? Richard's company, Mom said. Once we announce your pregnancy, the timing will be perfect. A merger between families, securing both companies' futures. Your father-in-law is already on board. My hand flew to my mouth. Richard was Sophia's husband, but he was also the CEO of their biggest competitor. A merger would mean, you're using my baby as a business deal. Sophia's voice cracked. I'm securing our family's future, Mom countered. Something your sister seems determined to undermine with her constant need for attention. Speaking of attention, Dad cut in. Dad's car just pulled up. I backed away from the door, but not quickly enough. It swung open, and I found myself face to face with Mom. Her perfectly applied makeup couldn't quite mask a flicker of panic. Lena? Her smile was brittle. How long have you been standing there? Long enough. The words came out firmer than I felt. So that's why you wanted the nursery done so quickly. It was never about Sophia's baby. It was about the merger. Sophia appeared behind Mom, one hand protectively over her stomach. Lena, it's not what you think. Really? Because it sounds like Mom's using your baby to manipulate Grandpa and secure a business deal. I met Mom's eyes. That's why you want me gone, isn't it? Because I might tell him the truth. You understand nothing about business. Mom snapped. About what it takes to protect this family's legacy. Protect it. I laughed. the sound harsh even to my own ears. "You mean control it, like you try to control everything else." The doorbell rang. Dad emerged from the study, adjusting his tie. "That'll be your grandfather. Perfect timing," I said, watching Mom's face pale slightly. I'm sure he'd love to hear about the merger plans, about how his great-grandchild is just another business asset. "You wouldn't dare," Mom hissed. I thought about my empty room upstairs, about years of missed art shows and conditional love, about Sophia's face when she realized her baby was just another piece in Mom's game. "Try me," I said, turning toward the front door. Mom grabbed my arm. "If you ruin this, you'll..." "What? Throw me out again?" Too late. The doorbell rang again. Sophia's hands were trembling. Dad wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. And Mom, for the first time in my life, I saw real fear crack through her perfect facade. I pulled free of her grip and walked toward the front door, my heart pounding, but my step steady. Behind me, I heard Mom's heels clicking rapidly across the floor, rushing to beat me there. The game was about to change. I just hoped I was ready for what came next. The college brochures spread across Aunt Clara's kitchen table looked like escape routes. Art programs, photography majors, creative writing departments, everything Mom would despise, everything I might love. "Berkeley has an excellent fine arts program," Clara said, sliding another pamphlet toward me. "And it's about as far from here as you can get without leaving the country." My phone buzzed. Another message from Sophia. "We need to talk. Alone." I'd been ignoring her texts since the dinner disaster 3 days ago, when Grandpa had stormed out after learning about the merger plans. Mom hadn't spoken to me since, but her silence spoke volumes. "Lena." Clara tapped the brochures. "You're miles away." "Sorry, I just..." My phone buzzed again. This time a message from Richard, Sophia's husband. "Meeting at the office. Important information about your mother's plans. Come alone." "I have to go," I said, standing abruptly. "There's something I need to handle." Clara caught my arm. "Whatever you're planning, remember what happened last time you tried to face them alone. This is different." I showed her Richard's message. "He might have proof about the merger, something we can show Grandpa. Or it could be a trap." She frowned. "At least let me drive you. They'll recognize your car. I'll take the bus." I grabbed my jacket. "Besides, I'm tired of hiding." The corporate office loomed ahead 30 minutes later, all glass and steel and secrets. The security guard barely glanced at my student ID before waving me through. Richard's office was on the top floor, with a view of the city that probably cost more than my college fund, if I even had one anymore. The elevator doors opened to reveal not Richard, but Mom. "I knew you'd come," she said, stepping inside before I could retreat. So predictable. The doors closed, and we began to ascend. "Where's Richard?" "At home with your sister, who, by the way, is absolutely devastated by your betrayal." She jabbed the emergency stop button, and the elevator lurched to a halt. "We need to talk about your future." "My future?" I laughed humorlessly. "You mean the one you're trying to control, like everything else. I'm trying to protect this family's legacy, something you seem determined to destroy." She pulled out an envelope. Inside is an acceptance letter to a Swiss boarding school. Very exclusive, very far away. My throat tightened. "You can't force me to go." "No? Think about Sophia. The stress you're causing could harm her baby. Think about your father. His position in the company depends on this merger." She held out the envelope. "One signature, and you get a fresh start. Isn't that what you want?" The elevator felt smaller by the second. "What I want is a mother who actually cares about me, not just her precious company." "Don't be dramatic. This is a generous offer. Take it before I change my mind." I looked at the envelope, then at her perfectly composed face. "You know what's funny? I used to think Sophia was the lucky one. Your perfect daughter, your pride and joy. But she's just as trapped as I am, isn't she? Something flickered in Mom's eyes. Fear, recognition. Before she could respond, my phone chimed. A message from Grandpa. Don't sign anything. On my way. Mom saw the text, her grip tightening on the envelope. Time to choose, Lena? Your family's stability or your selfish desires? What's it going to be? The elevator hummed around us, suspended between floors, as if my answer hung in the balance. I thought about the college brochures, about Sophia's shaking hands, about years of trying to earn love that should have been unconditional. I reached for the envelope. I took the envelope from Mom's hand and ripped it in half. The sound echoed in the elevator like a gunshot. That was a mistake, she said, her voice suddenly deadly quiet. The elevator lurched back to life, ascending to the top floor. When the doors opened, I found Dad and Richard waiting, along with 2 security guards. I tried to give you an easy way out, Mom said, stepping past me. Now, we do this the hard way. Richard held up a document. Sign this and we forget the scene you caused at dinner. Your grandfather never learns about your little outburst. What outburst? I looked from him to Mom. The truth. About how you're using Sophia's baby to manipulate him. The truth. Dad finally said something. Is that you've become unstable, dangerous to this family's reputation. Dangerous. I laughed. But it came out shaky. Because I won't play along with your games anymore. Mom nodded to the security guards. Show her. One guard produced a tablet, playing a video of me at the dinner. But something was wrong. The footage had been edited, making me look unhinged, aggressive. My words about the merger were cut out, replaced with what seemed like a jealous rant about Sophia's baby. Social media is so unpredictable, Richard said smoothly. Once something goes viral, you wouldn't, I whispered, but I knew they would. Sign the papers, Lena, Mom said. Agree to the boarding school, or this video goes public. Think about what that would do to your college applications, to your future. The elevator dinged again. Grandpa emerged, followed by Aunt Clara. Relief flooded through me until I saw their faces. I saw the video, Grandpa said, his voice heavy with disappointment. Lena, how could you? What? No, it's fake. I tried to explain. Clara cut in, her eyes pleading with me to understand. But the footage. Mom stepped forward, all concern and maternal worry. We've been trying to handle this privately, Dad. Lena's been struggling since we announced Sophia's pregnancy. The therapist suggested a change of environment might help. I'm not struggling. But my voice cracked, making me sound exactly like the unstable teenager they'd portrayed. They edited that video. They're trying to force me out because I know about the merger. Merger? Richard laughed. What merger, Mr. Whitman? I assure you, there's no merger. Just a troubled girl who needs help. I turned to Grandpa, desperate. You know me. You know I wouldn't. I know you've been under a lot of stress, he said gently. Maybe your mother's right. Some time away. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Even Grandpa believed their lies. Even he was willing to send me away. The papers. Mom pressed, holding out a pen. Sign them, and we handle this as a family. Refuse and the video goes public. I looked at each face in turn. Dad avoiding my eyes as usual, Richard smug and certain of victory, Clara torn between loyalty and the evidence before her, Grandpa, his faith in me shattered by their careful manipulation, and Mom, finally showing real emotion. Triumph. My hand shook as I took the pen. The document was filled with legal terms, but one phrase stood out. Voluntary commitment to residential treatment facility. Not boarding school. A psychiatric facility. Last chance, Lena, Mom said softly. Choose wisely. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from Sophia. Don't sign anything. I have proof. Hold on. But as I looked up at the wall of faces against me, at the carefully constructed trap they'd laid, I realized something terrible. Sometimes, holding on hurts more than letting go. I pressed the pen to paper, my signature the only weapon I had left. The residential facility admission papers felt heavy in my hands. Just as I pressed the pen to paper, the office door burst open. Sophia stood there, breathless, one hand protectively over her stomach. "Stop," she commanded, her voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. "Nobody's signing anything." Mom stepped forward. "Sophia, you shouldn't be here in your condition." "My condition?" Sophia laughed, sharp and bitter. "You mean the condition you've been using to manipulate everyone." She pulled out her phone. "I recorded everything, Mother. Your conversation with Richard about the merger, the plans to use my baby to secure Grandpa's fortune, even your instructions to the video editor about doctoring Lena's footage." The room went deathly silent. Richard's smug expression crumbled. Dad's face was drained of color. "You're lying," Mom said, but her voice wavered. "Am I?" Sophia pressed play. Mom's voice filled the room, crystal clear. "Edit out anything about the merger, make her look unstable. Once she's committed, no one will believe her anyway." Grandpa moved faster than I'd ever seen him move. He snatched the commitment papers from my hands, tearing them to shreds. "Eleanor," he said, his voice shaking with rage, "what have you become?" "Dad, I can explain." "Explain what?" Clara cut in. "How you were willing to commit your own daughter to a psychiatric facility to protect your lies." Mom's composure finally shattered. "Everything I did was to protect this family's legacy. The merger would have secured all our futures. If Lena had just stayed quiet. If I had just disappeared." I finished for her. "Like I've been disappearing my whole life? Staying quiet at my birthdays, ignoring art shows, every time you chose the company over me. You ungrateful." She lunged forward, but Sophia stepped between us. "Enough, Mom. I won't let you do to my child what you did to Lena. This ends now." Richard moved toward the door. "This is ridiculous. I never agreed to." "Sit down, Richard," Grandpa commanded. "Nobody leaves until we settle this." He turned to Mom, his expression granite. "You're done here, Eleanor. As of this moment, you're removed from the company board. The merger is canceled." "You can't." "I can, and I will. The company goes to Clara and Lena. Sophia, too, if she wants it." He looked at each of us in turn. "It's time this family remembered what actually matters." Mom's face contorted. "George, say something." Dad stood up slowly. For the first time in my memory, he met Mom's gaze directly. I should have said something 16 years ago. He turned to me. "I'm sorry, Lena. I was a coward." "A coward?" Mom's laugh was hysterical. "You're all cowards, destroying everything I built." "You built nothing," Sophia interrupted. "You just controlled and manipulated until you got what you wanted. But you forgot something, Mom. You forgot that real family can't be bought or controlled." I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw past the perfect exterior to the scared little girl who'd once told me bedtime stories, who'd been just as trapped as I was. "The video," I said quietly. "Release it." Everyone stared at me. "Release the real video," I continued. "Let everyone see the truth. No more hiding." Mom's face went white. "You wouldn't dare." Sophia's finger hovered over her phone. "Try us." In that moment, looking at Mom's crumbling facade, I realized something important. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's about finally being strong enough to walk away. I took Sophia's hand. "Come on, sis. Let's go home." Not to the house with its empty rooms and hollow promises, but to somewhere new, somewhere real. 6 months later, I stood in front of my easel at Berkeley's Spring Art Showcase, watching people study my piece. The painting showed a nursery, but not the perfect one Mom had designed. This one was real, with shadows in the corners, imperfect walls, and a golden light that made even the flaws beautiful. It's haunting, a voice said behind me. I turned to find Sophia, her baby daughter asleep against her shoulder. Though the yellow ducks are a nice touch, I thought about painting them white, I admitted. But some things deserve to stay bright. She smiled, adjusting the sleeping baby. Mom asked about you yesterday. I think she finally looked at the therapy pamphlets Dad gave her. And nothing. But she's trying. Maybe that's something. Grandpa and Clara appeared, arguing good-naturedly about the company's new direction. The art therapy program for at-risk teens had been my idea, but Clara had made it happen. Even Dad had started volunteering, teaching photography on weekends. Your mother's letter came, Grandpa said quietly, holding out a worn envelope. The one she wrote before you were born. I thought you should have it. I took it, feeling its weight. Did you read it? No, but I remember when she wrote it. She was different then, softer, before the company became everything. I slipped the letter into my pocket, unopened. Maybe someday I'd want to read about the mom she used to be, but not today. Today was about who I was becoming. The scholarship committee is here, Clara whispered, nodding toward a group of professors. Ready to show them your portfolio. Actually, I said. I want to show them something else first. I led them to the back of the gallery, where a larger canvas waited under a sheet. This painting had taken months, countless drafts, and more courage than I knew I had. I pulled off the sheet. The painting showed our family, but not in the perfect, posed way of old portraits. Instead, it captured real moments. Sophia reading stories to her daughter, Clara and Grandpa laughing over coffee, Dad behind his camera. Even Mom was there, distant but present, a shadow beginning to take new shape. And in the center, a teenage girl at an easel, finally visible, finally whole. Oh, sweetheart, Clara breathed. It's called Family Portrait Unfinished, I explained, because we're all still working on it, aren't we? Sophia squeezed my hand. Always. Later, after the scholarship committee had left with an offer I couldn't refuse and the gallery had emptied, I found myself alone with my paintings. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. The new art therapy program. It's good work. You're good at this. Not an apology, not yet, but maybe, like my painting, we were all unfinished works in progress. I thought about the unopened letter in my pocket, about the mother she'd been and the one she'd become, about how sometimes the hardest part of growing up is realizing your parents are growing too, in their own imperfect ways. Another text came through, this one from Dad. Proud of you, kiddo. Always have been. I looked at my family portrait one last time before covering it for the night. The shadows were there, but so was the light, making even the darkest corners glow with possibility, just like the nursery painting. It wasn't perfect, but maybe perfect wasn't the point. Maybe the point was learning to see beauty in the broken places, strength in the struggles, and hope in the spaces we leave blank, waiting to be filled with whatever comes next. I turned off the gallery lights and stepped into the evening, ready for my next canvas. What are you drawing? Grandma asked as she approached me. I was absorbed in drawing using a red pencil. I'm drawing the birthday cake we ate together, I said proudly as I finished drawing a glossy red strawberry and showed it to Grandma. In front of me there was a lavish cake, surrounded by familiar images of Grandma and friends. A happy smile spread across my face, and Grandma squinted her eyes, smiling gently. Nadine, your drawing is very good. You're like a professional painter, Grandma said, patting my head warmly. I closed my eyes, feeling the warmth of her hand and the happiness it brought. I love my grandma deeply. Even with little affection from my parents, the warmth of Grandma's hand was enough to keep me going. My name is Nadine, and I'm 28 years old. I love to draw and read books. During the day, I work as an office clerk at a small company, and at night, I write in my diary or draw comics, posting them on my blog and Instagram. I illustrate small daily life events in a humorous way, always trying to end on a positive note, even if I fail. As I do this, I can stay positive about my real life too. I'm so happy when people resonate with my posts and leave comments or likes. My proactive approach to life is also influenced by the environment I grew up in. I remember a story about a famous writer who was approached by a beautiful actress. "Wouldn't it be wonderful if a baby was born with your intellect and my looks?" the actress said. The writer replied, "The child might end up with your intellect and my looks though." The actress had hoped for a sister, but the writer had warned of me. My father works for a major company in LA. My mother was once a beauty pageant star. I've inherited my father's looks and my mother's intellect, along with their complexes. Relatives often say, "You have your father's nose," or "Your mother wasn't good at studying either." These words irritated my parents, so I gradually became treated as a disappointment. On the other hand, my younger sister Flora, 3 years my junior, was known in our community for her cuteness and intelligence. She charmed adults with her clear eyes, high nose bridge, fair skin, and smooth hair. She was loved like an angel, and everyone adored her, calling her cute. Our parents also loved her deeply as the ideal daughter, lavishing her with affection as if to affirm their love. Flora, meanwhile, learned to turn their love towards herself by cleverly casting me as the villain. When a dish was broken, she would say, "Nadine dropped it." When she neglected her practice lessons, the excuse was, "Nadine stopped me." When money was missing from mother's purse, she would claim it was under Nadine's instruction. I was always the one to bear the consequences of her actions. Despite the falsehoods, our parents always blamed me and held me accountable. They accepted the false narrative of me, jealous of my excellent sister, bullying her without question. Living in this house felt like hell. Yet I managed not to fall into despair thanks to the kindness of friends and my father's mother. Especially my nearby grandmother always warmly welcomed me whenever I was driven out of our house. Grandma repeatedly cautioned my parents, but when my mother vehemently argued back, blaming Grandma, I had no choice but to mediate, saying, "It's okay, it's my fault." This situation visibly angered my parents, and Grandma showed a sad expression. Instead, she poured deep affection into me, spoiling me greatly. Once, while Grandma was folding laundry, she saw a drawing I made on the back of a flyer and praised me. "Nadine, you have a talent for drawing," and gifted me high-quality drawing paper and a set of 36 colored pencils. For my birthday, when they didn't celebrate for me, Grandma prepared a huge whole cake. "We can't eat all of this by ourselves," she said with a laugh, and also invited friends. At Grandma's house, enjoying hamburgers and a rich cream cake, and opening gifts from friends, that moment of happiness was something I will never forget. My parents were aware that I frequently stayed at Grandma's house. Initially, they were angry, saying, "A child spoiled by her grandmother won't grow up to be a good adult." But they quieted down as I reached the upper grades of elementary school. They focused on perfecting Flora, completely losing interest in me. The harsh treatment towards me ceased, and they began to ignore my presence as if I had never existed from the start. Only the bare essentials for living were provided, and that was all. By the time I became a middle school student, I realized that my parents no longer cared about me. Still, I hadn't completely given up hope, but when I was told coldly in my 3rd year of middle school, "We can't afford your school fees because your sister needs to take entrance exams," I finally gave up on receiving any love from them. Despite my father working at a major corporation and being fully capable of affording my tuition, when Grandma heard this, she was so furious she seemed about to burst a blood vessel and suggested, "I'll pay for your schooling. You should come and live with me and go to high school." I intended to refuse, feeling sorry, but when I saw Grandma crying, saying, "Poor Nadine," I couldn't stop my own tears and hugged her. Later, with the help of my homeroom teacher, I took the exams without my parents knowing and was able to enter a nighttime high school. I left home to start a new life at Grandma's house, working part-time during the day and going to high school in the evenings. Grandma said I didn't need to work, but I wanted to earn at least my own living expenses. After graduating high school, I left Grandma's house and found a job as an office clerk at a small company in the neighboring prefecture, where I continue to work. I gave my parents my address, but they neither visited nor sent letters. We became completely estranged, even during Christmas. However, I finally managed to become independent and leave that house. I have always lived looking forward. Then one day I received a letter from my sister for the first time. Inside the fancy envelope was an invitation to my sister's wedding. My sister, 25 years old, and having barely seen her since middle school graduation, seemed to be marrying a high-earning man, much like our father, capitalizing on our mother's beauty. Reuniting with such a family was painful, but I was the only sister she had. If I didn't attend, it might raise suspicions in her in-laws' family. I have been working as a professional for 10 years now. Even though I am not the perfect daughter my parents envisioned, showing that I am living a decent life might improve our relationship, even if slightly. I will attend my sister's wedding after 10 years of estrangement, I casually posted on my blog, and received heartwarming comments from my followers. With courage, I marked will attend on the invitation. The day of my sister Flora's wedding finally arrived. As the bride's sister who must not be late, I drove early to the venue. The venue was an enchanting building modeled after a castle in a theme park, like something out of a fairy tale. Guided by the staff, I entered a room reserved for family. There were my aged parents and my beautiful sister, already dressed in her wedding gown. Flora. Overwhelmed, I barely managed a greeting. They looked at each other and said, "See, Mom? I told you she would definitely come." What I was taken aback by my sister's words. Mother exaggeratedly shrugged her shoulders, like a character from a cartoon. "To think you'd show up at your sister's wedding after dropping out of middle school is beyond me." "What do you mean?" "You really haven't changed, still so thoughtless." Father, his hair thinned, looked at me with an expression of surprise. Even though I expected to be considered a nuisance by my family, I hadn't expected such a clear and harsh response. It was unjust to be criticized as insensitive just for attending my sister's wedding. "Flora, you sent the invitation, didn't you?" I asked cautiously. She smiled and frowned slightly. "Yes, I sent it. But even someone like you is family, so how could I not invite you?" Her usual sharp tone was there, but this was not the time for it. "So why do you resent me being here? Did you actually want me to come?" Pointing out the contradiction, my sister touched her cheek and tilted her head. "Actually, that was true. But recently I realized it would be better to pretend you no longer exist than to invite you and have everyone ridicule your lack of education." "What?" "I realized it just a month ago. I meant to tell you, but then today arrived." "What does that mean? You behave as if I no longer exist, and you even find it troublesome to tell me?" Shocked by this incredible fact, my mother's piercing gaze stabbed through me. "It can't be helped. You have no experience with marriage, nor a likely partner, so you might not understand, but preparing a wedding is very hectic. Also, since we didn't actually think you'd come, I told Flora she won't come if she understands her place personally. If I were in your shoes, I wouldn't have the courage to attend a wedding. It would be too embarrassing, right?" Mother said with an unnatural laugh. "Don't say such sad things, Mom. I always believed my sister would come. We wanted her to feel recognized and loved as part of the family, that she's needed." "What are you talking about?" "I'm sorry for giving you false hope. But don't worry, we'll remember you as the kind sister who passed away early from a brain disease," Flora said. She looked at me with pity. "It's impossible that a lie made up so suddenly would be believed by our relatives and your husband. Don't worry. You haven't been in contact with our relatives for a long time, right? It's a well-known fact that you were isolated within the family. And I told them she wanted us to have a quiet funeral without overshadowing my wedding, only with the family. so there won't be any further questions. I've told my husband as well. He believes whatever I say. What a thing to do. Indeed, since graduating from middle school, I had barely met anyone other than Grandma. There were relatives who worried about me, but that was 10 years ago. If they were told I had died, they would believe it without doubt. At that moment, as I stood there dazed, my father threw something at me. It was the seating chart for the wedding. Take a look at this. Flora is marrying into a family of doctors. We can't introduce someone like you at such an event. I quietly opened the document and saw many names associated with doctor on the groom's side. Take it as a keepsake and leave quickly. You no longer exist in this world. Ha ha ha. At that moment, I heard my father's voice filled with disdain, along with the laughter of my sister Flora and my mother. Feeling dizzy, I rushed out of the venue. I hurried to my car and tried to start the engine with trembling fingers. However, I couldn't properly transmit strength to my hands. Tears flowed one after another, a mix of sadness, irritation, and hatred. It felt like a palette where dark colors of paint were chaotically mixed, reflecting my disordered state of mind. Knowing they would never change, I couldn't stop feeling pathetic and irritated at myself for having hoped. I vaguely watched people heading to the venue through the glass. Knowing I should not be here, I couldn't move my heavy body. Then, suddenly, my smartphone vibrated in my bag. As my hands grew cold, I took it out and saw a notification for a comment on Instagram. Because I had posted about attending my estranged sister's wedding yesterday, there were comments of concern and encouragement from friends and followers. Moved by their warm words, I used the story feature for the first time and shared my vulnerability. My family has declared me dead. It seems I have no reason to live anymore. As I typed, tears flowed incessantly. Soon after, another notification for a new message sounded. Encouraging words kept coming in. Nadine, you are not worthless. Nadine, I love your illustrated diary and your warm personality. I have been helped by Nadine's diary entries. Cut ties with such a family, Nadine. These were all words of anger and sadness from people I didn't know, who were speaking out for me. I had completely lost my confidence, but these words gradually began to sink into my heart. Then, apparently having seen my Instagram, my best friend called me crying. Nadine, hold on. Such an obvious lie can't be sustained forever. Act with confidence for your grandmother who cares so much about you. With these words, I suddenly came back to myself. For my grandmother, who cries, gets angry, and laughs for me. She must be at this wedding venue, without a doubt. Just thinking about how sad my grandmother would be if she heard I had died stirred up anger inside me. I am not a worthless person. I am not someone who should be ashamed of being alive. The ones who should be ashamed are those who scorn someone trying hard to live. I took a handkerchief from my pocket and firmly wiped my tears. Then I straightened my eyeliner and quietly opened the car door. When I returned to the venue, the reception had already started. I secretly peered inside through the glass. It seemed that a slideshow of the bride and groom's growing up was currently being shown. The slideshow included photos of our family, including me, and at the end of the presentation, the host mentioned the story of the bride's sister, who passed away from an illness a few months ago. This caused a stir among the relatives, and everyone turned to look at my parents. My father stood up and said Flora's sister died suddenly of a brain disorder. She was very kind, and she got along well with Flora, but was worried that her own illness might delay her sister's wedding. Next to him, my mother was pressing a handkerchief to her eyes. I couldn't believe that they could lie so boldly about me, whom they had just been talking with. The guests were unable to hide their astonishment as my father, with tears streaming down his face, said, "She must be happy in heaven." "Excuse me, do you have any business here?" a staff member approached me, asking with a tense expression. When I answered, "Actually, my sister asked me to do this surprise." Are you referring to the bride as your sister?" the staff member asked with a puzzled look. I smiled and responded, "Yes, that's right," and firmly opened the doors to the venue. The moment I entered through a door near the family seats at the back where the bride's father was sitting, all eyes immediately turned to me. Feeling overwhelmed by all the gazes, I recalled the words of encouragement from my friend and regained my composure. My parents, unaware of my presence, continued to spin their fabricated tales about me. Only my sister, seated at the high table, noticed me and hurriedly stood up. Before Flora could say anything, I raised my voice louder than ever before. "I am Nadine, the bride's sister." It took me a while to get back. Yes, hell was quite warm. I sweated a lot. The venue fell silent instantly with my greeting. Oops, my mistake. Not hell, I was in heaven, right? It was a brain disease, wasn't it? I tilted my head and joked, although my heart was pounding hard. As the venue froze in shock at the bizarre situation, my sister was the first to recover. "Who are you?" "My beloved sister is no longer in this world. How dare you make such a cruel joke? Someone, get this person out of here!" Flora yelled from the high table. It seemed they were trying to expel me before I was noticed. However, cries of surprise soon erupted around me. "Nadine. Is that Nadine?" Grandma slowly stood up and walked towards me, staggering. "Nadine, is it really you, Nadine?" "Oh, I'm so relieved. I couldn't believe it when they said you had died." Grandma's hands trembled as she grasped the edge of my dress. I firmly grasped her hand in return. "Grandma, it's me, Nadine. Your beloved Nadine." "Oh, Nadine, thank you." I immediately wrapped my arms around her to steady my staggering grandmother. My father's sister, who always looks after Grandma, hurried over. "Nadine, are you really okay? You're not ill?" While supporting Grandma, I looked at my aunt's worried face and nodded slightly. After handing Grandma over to my aunt, I scanned the venue again. The groom's side of the room was noisy, and the groom himself looked shocked. The bride's side was also disturbed, but especially my sister and parents looked pale. Straightening the wrinkles in my dress, I gathered my courage and began to speak boldly. "Thank you all for gathering here today. I apologize for the inconvenience at such a celebratory occasion. I am Nadine, the bride's sister. In fact, I was supposed to attend today, but my sister and parents told me to leave, because we're going to tell everyone you suddenly passed away." The room grew even noisier. "I hope you can understand my desire not to shock my beloved grandmother," Nadine Grandma whispered in a hoarse voice. "I was denied by my own family because I could not live up to their expectations. From a young age, I was constantly compared to my sister and discriminated against for my appearance and abilities." Wait a minute. My father was visibly shaken by my disclosure. However, I ignored his reaction and continued. "My sister, perhaps influenced by our parents, or maybe it's just her nature, always made me out to be the villain, monopolizing their affection. Whenever she caused any trouble, the blame was always shifted to me." "That's not true." My sister interrupted my statement. As the attention shifted to her, she began to tremble and tears started to flow. "Ladies and gentlemen, it's embarrassing to say, but my sister has a habit of lying. This caused me to hesitate to invite her to the wedding, and I ended up falsely claiming she had died. I apologize for that lie. Flora." The groom, confused but supportive, stood by my sister. Amid the confusion, with attendees unsure of whom to believe, it was Grandma who changed the atmosphere of the room. How disgraceful her strong, deep voice resonated throughout the venue. "You have always bullied Nadine. Do you even have a human heart?" "But Grandma." "Don't make excuses. It's disgraceful. Don't shame us further." "Ah." Under Grandma's stern rebuke, my sister trembled. "I'm leaving now. I didn't want to attend this ceremony originally, but I came because I thought Nadine would be here. I should not have come to such a pitiful event. Nadine, let's go home." Grandma warmly grasped my hand. I wanted to say more, but the warmth of her hand soothed my heart. "Yes, let's go home." As we were leaving the venue, I heard my mother making a clumsy excuse. "Flora's grandmother has been getting a bit forgetful." I quickly closed the door behind us to shut out her words. "Nadine, come to my house tonight. I'll make your favorite donuts," Grandma said gently as she stroked my hand. Yes, thank you, Grandma." Relieved by her words, I clung to Grandma and cried. Shortly after, all the relatives on my father's side left the venue. They were fed up with my sister and parents' reprehensible actions and had lost all desire to celebrate. "Nadine, I'm sorry. I knew you were being treated harshly but couldn't intervene in family matters. I should have supported you more," my aunt apologized tearfully. As I comforted her, stroking her back while she cried, I understood that it's hard to interject in another family's affairs. Ultimately, I left the venue with my father's family. I hadn't told everything to my parents, but I felt proud that I had faced the situation head-on without running away. While relaxing and enjoying donuts at Grandma's house, chaos ensued back at the wedding venue. My sister and parents argued to the groom's side that I was an uncontrollable person and that Grandma was experiencing cognitive decline. However, since a large part of my father's family had already left the ceremony in protest, few believed their claims. Their repeated excuses only deepened the bad impression, and many guests left the venue one after another. During this, the groom stood by dumbfounded, while his parents apologized to the remaining guests and encouraged them to head home. Visibly angry, my sister and my ever-changing parents declared, "We will recheck the facts and consult with the appropriate authorities if necessary before leaving the scene." As the venue emptied, my sister and parents showed no signs of self-reflection under the watchful eyes of the staff. Blinded by their misconceptions about me, they angrily headed to my apartment in the neighboring state where I live. But at that time, I was leisurely enjoying donuts at Grandma's house, soaking in a warm bath, so I wasn't home. My father, frustrated that the door wouldn't open, kicked it, and my sister picked up stones from around and shattered the windows. A concerned neighbor thought the disturbance was suspicious and called the police, resulting in the arrest of my parents and sister on the spot. Shocked by the call from the police and the landlord's story, I was reassured by the landlord's sympathy, who encouraged me, saying, "You are a decent person. This is just unfortunate." After explaining the circumstances behind my family's actions to the police, they sympathized and recommended that I stay with relatives for my safety. Later, I met with the family that was supposed to become my sisters-in-laws and apologized for the chaos at the wedding. I offered to pay compensation, but they refused, saying, "You have suffered as much as us." The truth about her came out before the marriage, which is fortunate, said the man who was supposed to be her husband, showing a helpless smile. He had contacted a detective agency immediately after the wedding to investigate my sister's past. The investigation revealed numerous falsehoods spun by my sister and parents. One such lie was that my sister attended a prestigious university and graduated, which I had also believed. However, I was surprised to learn that she had dropped out after 2 years because she tried to get close to a married professor for better grades and was subsequently sued by his wife. She boasted about working at a large corporation, but in reality, she was only working part-time at a convenience store inside the company's building. Flora, even while working part-time, got close to a married man who visited her workplace and was sued again by the man's wife. After losing her job, she met the groom. He quickly took a liking to Flora and was not concerned about her educational or employment history. The groom's parents were not fixated on a profession as a doctor and accepted their son's choice of partner. However, Flora's lies were eventually exposed, leading to the annulment of the engagement, and she was told to never come near again. Flora and our parents were left with the bills for 2 previous lawsuits, the wedding, honeymoon, and a new home. Additionally, there were repairs needed for my apartment. Faced with a total claim of about $100,000, they sought help but were rebuffed by my father's relatives and mocked by my mother's relatives, who said, "We cannot lend such a large amount to a liar." My parents and Flora continued to blame me repeatedly. They called me ungrateful and labeled me a failure. I am not afraid of my family who recklessly shouts to take responsibility for ruining their lives. The child who once cried, wanting to be loved as part of the family, no longer exists. When my father, veins bulging on his forehead, yelled about suing and demanded that I take responsibility to solve it if I did not want to pay, I calmly asked him, specifically, how? He reacted. Exactly how do you intend to sue me? I continued. Well, he stammered, and my mother and Flora tried to speak, but no words came out. How can you sue someone who you ignored as a child and treated as dead as an adult? I challenged. They were speechless. Perhaps I should be the one to sue. Do you want me to increase the compensation? I pressed further, and they choked on their words in frustration. Whether they will actually sue remains uncertain, but it likely serves as a deterrent. The broken engagement and police incident caused by my family's misbehavior are now widely known at my father's workplace, threatening his professional status. The people who once drove me to utter fear were now merely foolish and pitiable figures to me. It was not time that resolved the issues, but rather that their values became relative as I grew up, and they no longer had any effect on me. My family stopped seeing me merely as a source of money when they nearly depleted their savings for retirement. It was a bitter choice for them, and an unavoidable action. At one time, my sister Flora, whom my parents were proud of, now had a tarnished reputation and was shunned by society. The way my parents were baffled by her behavior clearly shows how vain their expectations were. Once the center of her own world, seemingly stable in her self-centeredness, her foundation had crumbled, and her temperament had become rough and unstable. If they could honestly acknowledge their mistakes and sincerely attempt to improve, there might still be a chance for them to start over. However, it is highly doubtful that they can develop such humility. In these challenging circumstances, I have made the decision to take a new step in my life. I quit my job and moved to a tranquil rural town with my beloved grandmother. In this town, I found a job at a small but warm company, and I live a peaceful and fulfilling life with my grandmother. Our serene life, shared through blog and Instagram posts as an illustrated diary, has gradually gained attention. Many people comment that they find healing in the cozy daily life with my grandmother, and I have amassed tens of thousands of followers. There is also talk of publishing the diary, and I live my days in a dreamlike state due to these unexpected developments. Your drawings really warm my heart, my grandmother said, stroking my head with her unchanged warm hand as she used to. While gaining social recognition was gratifying, seeing my grandmother smile is my greatest joy. I am deeply grateful to be able to share this happiness. I truly feel fortunate to have been born into this life. Seattle's rain was pounding against the window of Cindy Ford's office. She looked away from the quarterly financial report on her screen and gazed at the leaden sky. Normally, the view from the 30th floor would relax her, but today was different. Her cell phone vibrated, displaying a message from her brother David. "Cindy, do you have this month's living expenses? I won't make rent next week." Cindy sighed deeply. This marked the third year. To support her brother's college life, she had been sending $15,000 annually for living expenses. Their father had run a company but failed to keep up with the times, accumulating debt. Their mother was a housewife with no income, and David was a college student. The family's livelihood completely depended on Cindy's salary. No one but Cindy, who worked at an investment bank, could afford David's educational expenses. "Understood. I'll send the money today," she replied succinctly and opened her online banking page. The monthly transfer had become a routine. She thought it was all for her brother. While staring at the balance displayed on her screen, Cindy reminisced about events from 10 years ago. Their family had no financial leeway, but her brother aspired to attend law school, and she couldn't bear to make him give up on college. So Cindy, already a working professional at the time, chose to become the pillar of the family. Fortunately, she was financially comfortable due to her employment at a major corporation. However, bearing part of the university costs for 4 years was quite a burden, so instead of relying on scholarships, she offered to cover the living expenses for her brother, who needed to live alone. "It's time for the team meeting." Her assistant's voice brought Cindy back to reality. "Thank you. I'll be right there." On her way to the meeting room, Cindy saw her reflection in a mirror on the wall. Her navy blue suit was impeccably tailored, and her black hair was neatly arranged. At 32, as a senior analyst at an investment bank, she continued to strive for the top. Cindy calmly analyzed figures and made precise proposals. Her expertise was recognized by everyone. After the meeting, her cell phone vibrated again. This time, it was from her mother. "Cindy, I think David must have contacted you." "Yes, I've already sent the money." Cindy interrupted her mother's words. "Please understand him. College is a time to enjoy life." Cindy closed her eyes. Her mother's words always hid the usual criticism. The dissatisfaction with a daughter who was all work and no play. "I understand, Mom. I'm at work now, so we'll talk later." She hung up and returned to her desk. It was 6 p.m. Outside, it was already dark, and the rain was intensifying. A pile of documents still needed her attention on her desk. At 9 p.m., having finished her work, Cindy left the office building with an umbrella. The streets were nearly empty. She bought dinner at a nearby deli and headed to her apartment. Back in her room, in a luxury apartment, Cindy kicked off her high heels and sank into the sofa. While eating her takeout dinner, she checked her bank account balance. After sending money to her brother, her balance was lower than planned. The purchase of a new suit would have to wait until next month. Cindy sighed lightly and poured herself a glass of wine. A family photo on the wall caught her eye. The young Cindy in the picture still had hope for the future. Her cell phone rang again. This time, a message from David. "Cindy, thank you. I'll definitely cut back next month." Cindy chuckled. She had heard the same promise many times, yet she couldn't blame her brother. At least he was attending college and preparing for his future. That was what Cindy had wanted. As the night deepened, she opened her laptop and started preparing for the next day. While drafting a proposal for a new project, she pondered. How long could she keep up this lifestyle? Her pensioner mother, her brother's demands, the pressure at work. Sometimes the weight of it all seemed to crush her. But Cindy Ford wouldn't give up. That was her way. By midnight, she finally headed to bed. That night, Cindy habitually picked up her smartphone. With steaming chamomile tea by her side, she checked her social media. Usually this was a task that took only a few minutes, but this night was different. When she opened Instagram, a post liked by a colleague caught her eye. A young man raising a champagne glass in a high-end restaurant called Canopy. A familiar face. Cindy's finger paused on the screen. It was David. "Let's enjoy life. Hashtag luxurious night, hashtag best friends, hashtag Canopy." Cindy checked the date of the post. 2 days ago. It was the day after he had messaged her saying he was short on food money. Canopy was an upscale restaurant where a meal cost no less than $200 per person. Even Cindy herself only went there for special occasions. A wave of unease swept through her. She opened David's profile page. Post after post hit her like a punch in the stomach. It can't be. Cindy spoke without realizing. As she scrolled, more evidence of a lavish lifestyle appeared. Shopping at high-end boutiques, parties in VIP rooms, the latest smartwatch, designer brand clothes. Every post perfectly coincided with the times he had asked her for financial help. Her hands trembled. The chamomile tea grew cold. "My stomach hurts. I need money for medicine. The rent has gone up. The utility bills are higher than expected." David's past messages echoed in her head. Was it all a lie? Had her sacrifices merely supported her brother's luxurious lifestyle? Her phone vibrated again. A new message from David. "Cindy, we need to talk. I found a new car." Cindy threw the phone onto the desk. It was more deep sadness rather than anger that overwhelmed her. For 3 years, she had cut back on her own life. She had foregone new clothes, minimized vacations, and dedicated everything to her brother's future. She stood up and headed to the kitchen. She opened a bottle of wine and poured it into a glass. Her hand shook, spilling some wine on the counter. Without bothering to wipe it up, Cindy returned to the sofa. She opened her brother's social media again. This time, she scrutinized every detail. The luxury watch in the posts was worth at least $5,000. A new gaming console, high-end sneakers, brand bags. As she estimated the costs, it became painfully clear where her support money had gone. The night wore on. Cindy saved screenshots of all the posts. Date, location, estimated cost. She documented everything. She opened an Excel file and began to calculate calmly. Sadness slowly turned into a cold fury. The next morning, Cindy arrived at the office an hour earlier than usual. She printed the bank transaction history and reviewed 3 years of money transfers. The total exceeded $45,000. As she stared at the mountain of evidence spread out on her desk, Cindy had made up her mind. "Cindy, you're early today." Her colleague Kelly approached her. "Yes, just doing some research." Cindy responded calmly. She called her father. After 3 rings, a familiar voice answered. "Cindy? This is unusual." "Dad, I need to talk to you about David." Cindy chose her words carefully. "Oh, about the new car? He told me about it?" There was a proud tone in her father's voice. Cindy was momentarily at a loss for words. Her father already knew. "Dad, you do know what the living expenses I send are for, right? At least let him enjoy his youth. You're always too serious." Those words shattered something inside Cindy. Both her parents knew yet had turned a blind eye. In fact, they even supported her brother's luxurious lifestyle. "Dad, I cut back on my own living expenses every month." "Cindy, you're successful. Isn't it natural to help your brother?" Cindy sighed and hung up the phone. Her family always sided with David unconditionally when it came to him. The recent call probably didn't make them realize the extent of David's lavish lifestyle, but they dismissed the financial pain it caused Cindy as trivial. She stared at the mountain of evidence on her desk. This was the reality of her family. They were all using her. Her efforts and sacrifices were taken for granted. Late at night, a new message arrived. It was from her brother, who had just posted on social media from a luxury resort hotel that morning. "Cindy, I need $50,000 for a down payment on a car loan. I'm really cutting back on food expenses. But a car is a necessity, right?" The attached photo showed him smiling broadly in a showroom. Cindy sneered. On her smartphone screen, past posts from her brother lined up. "My sister is rich but a miser. She does nothing for the family, useless. Acts all elite from her investment banking job. Looking down on her own family." This was his true sentiment. All his careful words up to now had been an act. But this time was different. The last of Cindy's doubts had completely vanished. It was time to end this farce. Next morning, Cindy left home earlier than usual and met with a lawyer. She presented all the evidence and discussed her next steps. "Ms. Ford, this is a clear case of financial exploitation," the lawyer explained calmly. "If necessary, we can consider legal action." Cindy shook her head. "No, I have another plan." She returned to her office and opened her computer. Using her years of investment experience, she began the process of moving and protecting her assets. She diversified her accounts and set up a new security system. She would not be exploited by anyone anymore. In the afternoon, a call came from her mother. "Cindy, David is crying. Why won't you consider the car?" Mom. Cindy's voice was as cold as ice. I'm done being used. What are you saying? We're family. Her mother's voice trembled. Yes, we are family, Cindy said quietly. And that's exactly why this should never be allowed. After hanging up, Cindy opened her social media. She began drafting a long post. I want to share my experience with financial exploitation by family. In the evening, David showed up at her office in person. Cindy, why aren't you responding? Cindy calmly looked at her brother. His suit was high-end, his watch new, his hair perfectly styled. All bought with her money. Go home, Cindy said tersely. What are you talking about? We're family. David raised his voice. Yes, family. Cindy stood up and walked to the window. That's exactly why I won't tolerate any more lies. Cindy, what are you talking about? David's voice wavered. I'm talking about your lavish lifestyle. Cindy turned around. I'm just revealing the truth. For the first time, fear appeared on his face. Tell the truth to our parents by tomorrow, Cindy said calmly. Otherwise, I have plans. David started to say something, but Cindy raised her hand to stop him. Enough. For 3 years, I've been deceived. This is your last chance. After David left, Cindy stood by the window again. Tomorrow, everything would change. That was certain. The next morning, Cindy woke up earlier than usual. She took a deep breath and turned on her computer. The draft of her last post, which she had prepared the night before, was still on the screen. Evidence photos, bank records, screenshots of conversations. Everything was neatly organized. Checking her cell phone, she found over 20 unread messages from David. The content changed over time. It started with denial, gradually turned into pleading, and finally into threats. Cindy, you're joking, right? I'm sorry for everything. Don't destroy the family. Please, let's talk. If you keep this up, I won't stay silent. I might contact your company about various things. Cindy read all the messages but did not reply. Instead, she opened the bank's website. She checked the automatic transfer settings and pressed the delete button. Goodbye, David, Cindy murmured softly. At that moment, a strange sense of liberation enveloped her. While having breakfast, she started preparing for the next steps. She reviewed additional documents to give to her lawyer and checked her email. She also saved property information from San Francisco to her bookmarks. On her way to the office, Cindy's phone rang. Cindy, what are you planning to do? Her mother's voice was frantic. Did you hear the truth from David? Cindy's voice was surprisingly calm. Years of anger and disappointment had brought her a sense of serenity. He's remorseful. Don't hurt the family anymore. Her mother's voice had the usual coddling tone, as if David was still a small child. Remorseful? Hurt the family? Cindy chuckled dryly. Her reflection in a store window on the street showed a sarcastic smile. I was curious what you would say, Mom. Even knowing everything, you still prioritize him, just as I expected. Cindy, you always go to extremes. David has had it tough too. He's young, let him indulge a little. Had it tough? Indulge. Cindy's voice trembled slightly. For 3 years, I truly suffered. I skipped monthly dinners with friends, didn't buy new clothes, and gave everything to him. I worked overtime every day, even on holidays, and sent all the money I earned to him. But you can afford it. At that, Cindy felt an icy chill in her heart. So, because I can afford it, it's okay to use me. Do you know how hard I worked to get here? The part-time jobs during college, the relentless internships, studying from morning till night. You saw all that, didn't you, Mom? Oh, there you go again. Cindy, you always emphasize your own efforts. You lack gratitude towards others. We're family. It should be mutual. At those words, Cindy let out a scornful laugh. Gratitude? Mutual? What gratitude have I received? While David indulged in luxury restaurants, splurged on brand items, and enjoyed lavish vacations, I scrimped on my own life. If you have that much money, of course, you should help your family. Her mother's voice grew shrill. David is still young. He has the right to enjoy life. He doesn't need to lead a life just about work like you. At that moment, something definitively broke inside Cindy. Mom, now I understand everything. My life has just been that of an ATM under the guise of family destined to be exploited forever. Cindy, what a terrible thing to say. That's enough. Cindy hung up the phone. Her hands were trembling. But it was not out of anger, but rather a kind of relief. The conversation with her mother had cut the last ties of hesitation. When she arrived at the office, she immediately opened social media. She uploaded the long post she had prepared and all the evidence photos. David's luxurious posts, transfer records, and pleading messages. Finally, she added a sentence. Exploitation under the guise of family is the most despicable betrayal. For 3 years, I continued to send monthly payments to support my brother's lifestyle, totaling over $45,000. However, these funds were not used for tuition or living expenses, but for luxury items and entertainment. My mother was aware of this fact and tacitly consented. Now, I am cutting off this chain of exploitation. Because we are family, we must speak the truth. Cindy pressed the post button and sent another prepared email. It was a transfer request to the San Francisco branch. Hours later, social media was ablaze. Cindy's post spread rapidly, receiving many comments of sympathy. However, condemnation from her family also poured in. What joy do you find in airing our family's dirty laundry? Have you forgotten all the years we raised you? A furious message from her father. I will never forget your actions. As a mother, I am ashamed to have such a daughter. An email from her mother. Cindy, are you trying to ruin my life? This going public could affect my job prospects. Threatening words from David. But Cindy was unshakable. She blocked all contacts and began the process of getting a new phone number. She also changed her social media accounts to the highest privacy settings. In the evening, she received a call from HR. Ms. Ford, your transfer to the San Francisco branch has been approved. You will start next month. Thank you, Cindy replied quietly. Having cut off all contact, she did not know what actions her financially strapped brother might take. Moving physically away was advice from her lawyer, but she felt a slight excitement about the change in environment. She felt the door to a new life opening. Back at her apartment, she sat in the living room and poured herself a glass of wine. Messages of support from those who saw her post were coming in on her phone. You showed great courage. Your actions give hope to others suffering in similar situations. I too was exploited by my family. Reading your post gave me the courage to finally move forward. Speaking the truth is sometimes the hardest choice, but it was necessary. Late at night, she completed the last piece of business. The documents she had requested from her lawyer had arrived. A registered letter addressed to her parents' home. It listed the total amount of money sent and the evidence of its misuse, mentioning the possibility of legal action. Cindy signed the document and sealed the envelope. This was her final notice to her family. She felt the weight of 3 years lifting off her shoulders. A month after moving to San Francisco, Cindy Ford welcomed the morning in her new office. The weekend before the verdict, her parents unexpectedly visited her office. Cindy, please listen. Her mother's voice trembled. With a face more haggard than Cindy had ever seen, her mother took her hand and apologized deeply. We were all wrong. We exploited you. I'm truly sorry. Cindy looked down at her mother with a cold gaze. It's too late. But we really are remorseful. David too. He cries every day. He's lost all hope for the future. That's his own doing. Her mother's pleading continued. However, Cindy's heart had already frozen. Cindy. Her father's voice had lost all its former dignity. I came to apologize. It's all my fault. I indulged David too much. I exploited you without considering your feelings. I truly am sorry." Her father apologized deeply. He looked nothing like the strict father Cindy remembered. Yet, Cindy's resolve did not waver. The next day, David appeared. "Cindy, forgive me." His demeanor had lost its former arrogance, and he looked utterly defeated. "I was really wrong. I took advantage of your kindness to lead a lavish life. I even bad-mouthed you on social media. I'm truly, truly sorry." David also apologized deeply. Even as her family knelt before her, Cindy felt nothing. It was all too late. The following week, her phone vibrated. It was a call from her lawyer. "The verdict has been finalized. The court fully supported your claims and decided to impose a stricter penalty." Cindy took a deep breath. Defendant David Ford is ordered to return the unjust gains and is found guilty of fraud. Although he will receive probation, he now has a criminal record. Given that he was job hunting, this verdict effectively makes it impossible for him to be employed by major companies. The lawyer paused before continuing. "Your parents have also been found liable as accomplices. If they cannot pay the damages, the foreclosure of their home is being considered." True to these words, the family home was put up for auction a week later. Her father's company was discovered to have significant irregularities during a tax inspection and went bankrupt. Her parents had to move in with relatives on her mother's side. A year had passed since then. The mornings in San Francisco were different, imbued with a unique light unlike Seattle's. From her 50th floor penthouse office, the view seemed to symbolize her new life. In her desk drawer, there were several unopened letters, all from her family. The latest envelope was hastily scribbled with "Urgent" by her mother. Reading next to it danced with the words, "Check immediately," and "Important." However, Cindy had no desire to open them. Her phone vibrated. It was a message from an acquaintance in Seattle. She hesitated but thought it might be work-related and checked the screen. "Cindy, it's about David. I thought you should know." Attached was a screenshot from a local newspaper. "Local luxury brand shoplifting incident. Defendant sentenced to prison." David Ford's name was prominently featured in the article. Unable to pay bail, David, who had spent 3 months in jail awaiting trial, ultimately received a 1-year prison sentence. Shoplifting while on probation led directly to an actual prison sentence. His reoffense, despite being given a chance for rehabilitation, was viewed severely. His photo was also included in the article. Gone was his formerly arrogant expression, replaced by tired eyes. Cindy sighed deeply as she set her phone down on the desk. This wasn't the first news she had heard. Over the past year, she had received fragmented updates about her family's situation. Their lives seemed to spiral downward as if by fate. After David was incarcerated, her mother's condition rapidly deteriorated. Unable to cope with the stress, she fell into a severe depression. Medical expenses mounted, and savings were depleted. It seemed they were also kicked out of the relative's home where they had been staying. Rumors were that they were applying for welfare. After dropping out of college, David had drifted from job to job. His obsession with luxury brands remained unchanged, and he continued to live beyond his means, accumulating debt. His once luxurious lifestyle had turned into days of being chased by debt collectors. This shoplifting was the act of a desperate man. Cindy reluctantly took out the letters from her family. After hesitating, she opened the most recent envelope. Her mother's desperate handwriting danced across the page. "The unpaid hospital bills are piling up. We've been blacklisted by several hospitals. We might lose the house. If you read this letter, please contact us immediately. Please, Cindy, you're our last hope." Next, the total amount of debt was listed. It was about a third of Cindy's annual salary, a sum she could easily afford. Cindy tore up her mother's letter and threw it in the trash. There was no hesitation in her movement. The luxurious life they had led was all built on lies. Now, they were facing the consequences. There could be no more fitting situation for the phrase, "You reap what you sow." The next morning, she found a more detailed article online about David's prison sentence. It included a comment from David at the end. I reached out to my sister for help, but she coldly refused. My wealthy sister has abandoned her own family. Cindy chuckled. He still didn't think he was at fault. Her brother, who could only blame others, hadn't changed at all. That very nature had led him to ruin. At the office, a new project was about to start. Cindy focused on reading the materials. There was also talk of a promotion. If things went smoothly, she would break the record for the youngest head of department. Work was going well. She had a new partner, and she finally had time for hobbies. Life, free from the burden of family, was lighter than she had ever imagined. Late at night, drinking wine on her balcony, Cindy looked up at the stars. Memories of her former family felt like a distant past. There was certainly sadness, but it felt like an old wound that was already healing. By shedding the burden of family, she was able to live her own life for the first time. It might have been lonely at times. However, that solitude was far more honest than the false bonds of the past. Tomorrow, another new day would begin, and she would continue to walk her chosen path without hesitation. As I gazed at the white ceiling of the hospital room, I gently caressed my swollen belly. My name is Jessica. I am 30 years old this year. I met my husband, William, through work. We worked on a project together and were drawn to each other. William is kind-hearted and thoughtful, always there to support me. After getting married, we wanted children immediately but struggled to conceive. We decided on fertility treatments, facing many trials and failures. There were tears, but William always encouraged me, saying, "As long as we're together, we're happy." Finally blessed with this little life, after a long journey, I am now ready to embrace a new life with the child growing inside me. Each movement in my belly fills me with love and joy. "We'll meet you soon," I whisper to my belly, and it's as if in response, I feel a gentle kick. I smile at the sensation. Pregnancy has not been easy, but having my husband William by my side has allowed me to feel secure. He has adjusted his work to be as close to me as possible. Today, he rushed from work when he heard I was in labor. As he looked at me worriedly, he asked about my condition. "Jessica, it's okay, it's almost time." My husband Willem said, sitting beside me and gently holding my hand. As labor pains came, I tried to breathe through the pain, which made it hard to breathe. Sweat formed on my forehead, and I could feel the tension throughout my body. Enduring the anxiety and pain, I found a bit of comfort in my husband's warmth. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes to prepare for the next wave. Suddenly, my stepmother, Daniela, called. "Hello." "Oh, Jessica, how are you feeling?" Daniela's voice was as refined and calm as ever. "It seems labor has started. What's the matter?" "Yes, of course. There's something I need to tell you." "A report?" "I've taken out a loan in your name. It was necessary for Brittany's study abroad." I gasped. "Excuse me? What did you just say?" "Well, she needed the funds for her future. You're about to have a child, and you'll need money, right? So, I thought I should help out the family a bit beforehand." "Family? Which right does she have to speak of family now?" Anger welled up inside me. "Such. How could you?" I asked, trembling. "Jessica, don't worry. I plan to help with the repayment, and I won't trouble you. I've already handled the paperwork," Daniela assured me, seeming pleased with herself. I tightened my grip on my smartphone. "But why would you do something like that without my knowledge?" "I wasn't informed at all." "Why would you make such a unilateral decision?" I asked, my voice fearful. Daniela seemed to laugh satisfactorily. "Well, you have a husband, William, and you're financially stable. Using your name, the credit check went smoothly, so please understand, all right?" she explained and then hung up. I stared at my phone and immediately checked the recording. Daniela's voice was clear. "Jessica, what's wrong?" William noticed something was off by looking at my face. "Daniela did it," I revealed. William's expression hardened. "She used your name without permission." "Yes, but I've got the evidence. Can you contact the lawyer?" I handed him my phone. He checked the screen, quickly tapped the lawyer's number, and pressed the call button. "Hello, Jessica." The lawyer responds with a calm and composed voice. "Hello, this is Jessica's husband, William." I recorded it. Daniela clearly stated that she took out a loan in Jessica's name. He informed the lawyer Richard. "Understood. Let's proceed immediately. We've prepared the legal steps beforehand. We'll notify the financial institutions and consider a fraud charge." The lawyer Richard responded calmly. William looked at me and nodded firmly. "Please do," he said. I felt a bit relieved hearing those words. I had been waiting for this moment for months. It was a while ago that I last visited my family home. After my father passed away, I had kept my distance from my family home. The reason was simple. Daniela, my stepmother, and her daughter, Brittany, did not treat me like family. They entered my life when I was 15 years old. My mother had died of illness, and before I could even grieve, my father remarried Daniela 6 months later. She was a beautiful woman with an elegant demeanor and a kind smile, which initially charmed me. However, that was just a facade she showed to the outside world. My stepmother Daniela had a 13-year-old daughter, Brittany. She had blonde hair and blue eyes, resembling a princess from a movie. But I quickly realized that Daniela truly loved only her own daughter. In front of my father, she played the kind stepmother, but gradually they started treating me as an unwanted presence in the house. As soon as my father passed away, their attitude completely changed. "Jessica, you're an adult now. Don't rely on your family home anymore. With your father gone, this is now our house," they declared. At that moment, I realized I had become a complete outsider. Still, I decided to visit my family home after a long while to collect my father's belongings. I only learned through a lawyer named Richard after his death that his cherished possessions like watches, family photos, and letters were still at the house. Daniela had moved forward with the inheritance proceedings without informing me. I had avoided meeting her directly, but I was determined to reclaim these precious mementos. The family home felt cold when I stepped inside after so long. Despite once living there as a family, it no longer felt like my place. When I entered the living room, Daniela was sitting on the sofa, elegantly sipping tea. Beside her, Brittany was boredly playing with her phone. "It's been a while, Jessica. What do you want?" Daniela looked at me briefly, her voice showing little interest. "I've come to collect my dad's belongings. I heard the watches, family photos, and letters are still here," I informed her. Daniela shrugged in annoyance, and Brittany snorted. "Belongings? We've already disposed of that junk." I was momentarily speechless. "Disposed of? What are you talking about? Why keep old photos and letters? We sold the watch to an antique shop. There was no reason to keep anything for you, Jessica." Hearing Daniela speak in such a nonchalant tone filled me with rising anger. Those were things my dad cherished. How could you just do that? "How? I manage this house. Besides, you're no longer part of this home, are you?" Seeing the cold smiles on Daniela and Brittany's faces, I was stunned. Were they really willing to trample over my father's memories? At that moment, something became clear in my mind. I no longer needed to share any familial affection with these people. I was here to reclaim what was mine. I let out a deep breath and relaxed my shoulders. Fine. I'm leaving. Realizing that talking to them was a waste of time, I headed towards the entrance. There was no reason for me to stay any longer. Although I was furious that my father's possessions had been disposed of, I knew arguing with them was pointless. As I was putting on my shoes at the entrance, I vowed never to return to this house. But just then, I overheard something. "Hey, Mom, what's happening with the loan under Jessica's name?" Brittany's casual voice echoed in the hallway. What did she just say? I paused, restraining my movements. Pretending to tie my shoes, I listened intently. "Brittany, keep your voice down." Daniela chided her in a low tone, her voice tinged with urgency. "But you're going to use that money to send me abroad, right? We need to hurry or the approval will take time. That's why I told you I'm handling it. We're proceeding without letting Jessica notice." Approval? Under my name? It clicked in my mind. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Daniela and Brittany were indeed planning to take out a loan under my name. My heart pounded furiously. I wanted to confront them immediately, but that would leave me without evidence. I quickly took out my smartphone and started the recording app. Daniela's calm voice continued. "Jessica is pregnant and distracted. Even if she sees the documents, she'll likely sign without checking. Plus, her husband seems too busy to manage their finances." True. She's kind of scatterbrained, isn't she? I could hear Brittany chuckling softly in the background. "So, we'll take out the entire study abroad loan under Jessica's name. By the time she notices, payments will already have started." This was the lowest of the low. At this point, I was convinced. They were truly planning to exploit my life. But now I had the conclusive evidence I needed. I confirmed the recording was securely saved, then quietly slipped my smartphone back into my bag. "Oh, okay. Understood," I said, as if nothing had happened, standing up and finishing tying my shoes. Daniela and Brittany continued their conversation in the living room, unaware that I was still at the entrance. I lightly touched the doorknob and took a quiet breath. Currently, my top priority is to leave here unnoticed. I carefully opened the door without making any unnecessary noise. I step outside without looking back even once. The cold air brushes against my skin, and finally the tension begins to melt away. I will never forgive them. I murmur quietly as I close the door. Without hesitation, I pull out my smartphone and dial my lawyer Richard's number. I then submit the recorded data to my lawyer Richard. He frowns deeply upon hearing it, acknowledging the seriousness of the situation, and immediately prepares to take legal action. Although I feel frustrated, I have set up the minimum necessary defenses. Since overhearing their conversation that day, I never intended to remain just a victim. I had secured solid evidence and, together with my lawyer Richard, prepared to strike back whenever necessary. After that, I successfully gave birth. Raising a child for the first time was more challenging than I had imagined. Waking up frequently to the sound of crying at night and constantly busy with feeding and changing diapers. Yet, whenever I watched my baby sleep peacefully in my arms, all the fatigue seemed to vanish. "Are you okay? Why don't you take a break?" My husband, William, suggests kindly as he prepares some milk in the kitchen. "Thank you, but I'm fine. You have work too, so don't overdo it." I respond, even though he looks at me with concern. Having him by my side, I can face any situation. However, I knew that there were still unresolved issues lurking in my mind. And soon, they would become a reality that I had to confront. A few days later, while I was quietly reading a book at home, my phone vibrated. It's Daniela. Everything is going according to my plan. Yet now I must pretend to be oblivious. I press the call button. "Hello." "Jessica, listen to me." Daniela's voice is clearly irritated. It seems she is panicked because things haven't gone as planned. What? What happened? I ask, feigning concern. "I told you I had taken out a loan in your name, but it failed." While secretly smirking inside, I continue to feign ignorance. "Failed? What do you mean?" "The application was approved. All that was left was the final confirmation to finalize the contract, but it was suddenly canceled." Daniela's voice was shaking with anger. Jessica, did you do something? Me? I haven't done anything. I lied, feeling triumphant inside. In fact, I had already taken measures through my lawyer Richard to alert the financial institutions. If any suspicious loans were attempted under my name, a warning would be issued immediately, and the contract would be automatically voided. Daniela was unaware of this. That's why the approval was blocked before it could be finalized. Are you sure you didn't do anything? Yes. I didn't know anything about this. But what does that mean? It was approved and then suddenly it's invalid. I asked, feigning surprise, and Daniela seems to have gotten even more frustrated. Yes, what's going on? It seems like there's some special restriction on your credit information, and the process can't be done without the actual person. I wasn't expecting this. That's the trap I set. I sighed softly, still pretending to be confused. I just gave birth, so I won't be able to do much for a while. Sorry. Why don't you or Brittany take out the loan in your own names? Damn it. Daniela ignored my suggestion and clicked her tongue in annoyance. The moment the call ended, I quietly placed my phone on the table and looked up at the ceiling. It's over, Daniela. My name was protected, and Daniela's plans were completely thwarted. I smiled slightly and quietly closed my eyes. About a month after giving birth, I receive a call from my lawyer, Richard. Jessica, the investigation results are in. Regarding your father's estate, it has almost been used up by Daniela. I knew it. My certainty turned into anger. The estate should have been yours to inherit. However, she used illegal means to divert everything for herself and her daughter. Richard explained. Illegal means? Yes. After your father passed away, she should have conducted the official estate division proceedings. Instead, Daniela used forged documents to take control of all the assets. She then moved the funds through multiple accounts. Daniela had anticipated that I wouldn't verify the details of the estate and took everything for herself. Unfortunately, a significant amount has already been spent. However, there's a possibility to recover some of it through legal action. Richard advised. Without hesitation, I responded. I will sue my stepmother Daniela and stepsister Brittany. Days later, I found myself facing Daniela directly. William sat beside me, and our lawyer Richard was also present, while Daniela and Brittany maintained their usual composed demeanor. You're making too much of this, Daniela said with a smile. Jessica, we're family. Shouldn't we help each other? I used Dad's inheritance for everyone's benefit? For everyone. You mean you and Brittany, right? I retorted coldly, and Brittany shrugged lightly. Why fuss over such details? You're living a wealthy life anyway. It wouldn't hurt you to help us out a bit. Help you? Don't joke with me. I leaned forward on the table, fixing them with a steady gaze. I'm here to protect what my father left behind, not to be exploited by you. But, aren't we family? Daniela's sugary voice echoed, but I was no longer fooled. You are not my family. People who deceive and use their family have no place in my life. I declared firmly, seeing Daniela's expression stiffen. I thought we could settle this through discussion, but it seems impossible. William, let's go, I said, standing up. William immediately followed. Jessica, wait. Daniela called out in a panicked voice. Are you serious about the lawsuit? I turned back and said quietly, yes, I'm serious. Weeks later, I formally filed the lawsuit. William was fully supportive, helping the legal team gather all the evidence. We had proof of Daniela's illegal acquisition of the inheritance, bank transaction records, and forged documents. There was no escaping the truth for them now. Preparing for the trial amidst parenting was tough, but strangely, my heart felt lighter. William, thank you so much, I said one evening, and he gently held my hand. What are you talking about? We're family, aren't we? I was reminded once again of what true family meant. As I watched my son sleep, I felt determined. I was going to protect my life and what my father had left behind. It was time to settle this in court. On the day of the trial, I stood in the courtroom with my lawyer, Richard. Daniela and Brittany were seated at the defendant's table. The confidence they once had was gone. Now, they looked worried and anxious. Daniela tried to appear composed, but her fingertips nervously tapped on the desk. Brittany kept her eyes down, clearly unable to hide her irritation as she shifted in her seat. William watched me from the spectators' gallery, his steady gaze giving me silent strength. "We will now begin the hearing," the judge announced. I took a deep breath, ready to end everything. Lawyer Richard started presenting the evidence calmly. In this case, it has been clearly demonstrated that defendant Daniela Johnson illegally acquired the estate of the deceased, Thomas Johnson, and attempted to take out illegal loans under the plaintiff's name. He handed a document to the judge. This is a copy of the document the defendant submitted to the bank. It's clear that the plaintiff's signature was forged, and the loan application was made without her consent. Furthermore, this audio evidence records the defendant admitting to attempting to take out loans using the plaintiff's name. The courtroom played Daniela and Brittany's conversation. "If we use Jessica's name, she has good credit, and if we do it right, she won't notice. She's kind of naive, isn't she? She won't realize what's happening." Their dismissive laughter stirred unrest among the spectators. The judge coughed lightly, calling for silence. This audio was recorded by the plaintiff to gather evidence of unauthorized use of her bank account. Additionally, these transaction records show that Mr. Thomas Johnson's estate was illegally transferred to the defendant's account and subsequently misused in various ways. My hands clenched quietly. The anger and frustration I had felt were now being laid out as evidence in this courtroom. The verdict was a complete victory for me. The illegally acquired inheritance was returned to me, and a portion of Daniela's assets was seized. The illegal loan applications were all voided, and my credit remained untarnished. As we were about to leave the courtroom, Daniela shouted at me, "This is unfair. I was just trying to secure a future for Brittany." Brittany stood up abruptly, kicking her chair. "Why does Jessica get everything? I've had struggles too." "Jessica, please. Forgive us. You're misunderstanding. I was just trying to do what's best for the family," Daniela pleaded. I couldn't help but scoff. "The best." I looked at her intensely. "Your idea of best was to use my name without permission, embezzle my inheritance, and exploit my life. But you wouldn't suffer, right? You have a husband, and you live a wealthy life." Daniela's voice grew shrill. "We're family, so helping each other is natural." I shook my head quietly. "You are not family. A real family doesn't deceive and exploit one another. You just conveniently use the word, family, for your own desires. I will never forget how you treated me," I said calmly, staring them down. Then, I added just one more thing. "Get out of my life." They gasped, and the next moment, they glared at me, shaking with anger and frustration. But no matter what they said, my resolve would not be shaken. Now that everything was out in the open, they were nothing more than fraudsters. I stepped outside the courthouse with William. "It's over," William muttered quietly. I nodded slightly, looking up at the blue sky. "No, it's just the beginning. I had fought to protect my life and my family, and I had finally reclaimed everything. From now on, I would no longer be swayed by them. I was just going to move forward with my family into the future." After the trial ended, I felt truly liberated. Legally, Daniela was completely cut off from me, severing all ties. Everything was over, and I had finally gained my freedom. Later, Brittany attempted to study abroad, but due to the assets Daniela had lost, she lacked the necessary funds and ultimately couldn't go anywhere. All that remained for them was a significant amount of debt. Meanwhile, I was starting a new life with my husband William and child. The burdens that had once been imposed on me by my family were gone, and I had regained a life that felt true to myself. Even while busy with childcare, I began to seriously engage in a business I had always been interested in. an online shop that I could manage at my own pace while raising a child. I started by selling handmade accessories and childcare goods. I focused on the quality and design of my products and used Instagram and blogs to connect with many followers who empathized with my business approach while parenting. Leveraging my own parenting experiences, I carefully selected items that were genuinely useful and products that made life easier for busy mothers, gradually building trust through word of mouth. As a result, my online shop sales steadily increased, and I established a new lifestyle that balanced work and parenting. It wasn't easy, but with my husband Williams's full support, I was able to continue both parenting and my work without having to give up either. Having overcome my past struggles, I now appreciate my fulfilling days even more profoundly. One day, while enjoying a peaceful time in the park with my family, I quietly vowed to myself, I will never let anyone take my life from me again. I smiled with conviction, feeling no more trauma or anxiety inside. The future holds limitless possibilities, and I am confident that I can face any challenge